Marvel, fishing in the skies. Starting with the Ghost Swordsman Legacy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. Odin looked at Kinluo, who was smiling, and his expression dimmed a little. He sighed helplessly and kept silent. No matter who you are, human, you will die in my hands today and be buried with my poor children. After saying this, the wings behind him flashed. In an instant, he appeared in front of Kinluo, and the golden wings directly enveloped Kinluo. In an instant, Kinluo seemed to have entered a golden world. Countless spiritual powers rushed into his sea of consciousness like a tide. Feeling this majestic power of faith, the heart and eyes flashed with blue lightning. In an instant, Kinluo's sea of consciousness seemed to turn into a thunderstorm. Countless lightning bombarded those golden powers of faith. Soon, most of them were wiped out. Feeling all this, the face of the Father of Heaven could not help but change wildly. He thought that he had only used half of his power of faith to hurt Odin. If Odin had not had the spirit of a desperate man at the beginning, and he was quite cherishing his life, the result of the battle is still unknown. However, even with his full strength attack, he couldn't even get close to the human sea of consciousness. Who is this person? Why does he have such terrifying power? The Father of Heaven suddenly recalled Odin's advice. Could this human being in front of him be a god? Impossible. He knew the 5 gods. Just when the priest was doubting his life, he suddenly felt a strong sense of restraint. Then he saw Kinluo's red eyes, and the scarlet ghost hand. Soul-eating hand, soul-destroying hand. 2 consecutive powers burst out. The Father of Heaven flew backwards in an instant, and the surrounding golden power of faith was also infected by Kinluo's madness at this time. It became extremely unstable. The condensed power of faith can hardly withstand the lightning impact of the heart, not to mention these extremely unstable powers of faith. 5 Blood Blade. Before the Heavenly Father could react, a huge blood sword exploded in front of him. Indescribable pain surged into his heart. His vitality was completely plundered, and at the same time he felt a sense of death. I didn't expect that you still have enough blood and energy. It's just right to use you to replenish it. Kinluo's eyes lit up at this time, looking at the expression of the Heavenly Father. It was as if he was looking at a piece of top-grade beef. Mountain collapse, rage burst, soul-devouring demon sealing / Several skills unique to Emperor Blood-Killing Heaven were used in succession, and the breath of life on the Heavenly Father immediately dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. This is the case when Kinluo put his hands back and deliberately controlled it. Otherwise, with the unique destructive power of Emperor Blood-Killing Heaven, the Heavenly Father is probably dead now. After all, Kinluo finally caught a toad, and he had to squeeze out a ball of powder anyway. He hasn't absorbed blood and energy from the enemy for a while. At the same time, Kinluo felt a little regretful. If he had known that these guys had so much vitality, he would have known that those angels don't mix them all together. Wouldn't it be better to use it as nourishment for blood and energy? Miscalculated. Chapter 422. The Kingdom of Heaven is destroyed. Faith collapses. Everyone watched the Heavenly Father being brutally abused by Kinluo, without any room for fighting back. There was a strange feeling in my heart. It seemed that Mephisto had been brutally abused by Kinluo before. They were really worthy of being enemies in the past. The endings were so similar. Alas, the Kingdom of Heaven is completely finished this time. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer people at the beginning. I wanted to save the old bird man's life. Now it seems that Kinluo is right. Good words can't persuade the damn ghost. Odin came to Ancient One and Old Carter inside. Old Carter did not react. Ancient One had a similar feeling to Odin. After all, she was half of the same period as Odin. Both were old monsters who had lived for thousands of years. Ancient One had basically seen or heard of everything that Odin had experienced. It's just that Ancient One's identity is rather special. In many things, their supreme sorcerer is just a spectator. He will not get involved at all unless the earth is threatened. For example, the battle between heaven and God's realm. Don't be sad about the death of the rabbit. If you can't stand it, You can go and stop it." Ancient One's words almost choked Odin to death. "Go stop Kinlawo from destroying his old enemy?" "Don't be ridiculous." Even if Kinlawo touched Loki, he wouldn't say anything. "What's the situation now?" "His one, I can see it clearly. He is no longer the so-called Lord of the Nine Realms. Now the real master of the earth and even the Nine Realms is Kinlawo." And Odin has no doubt that with Kinlawo's growth rate, it will not be a problem for him to become the king of this world in the future. A single god can no longer threaten Kinlawo, unless the five gods act together, but that kind of situation is basically impossible. Odin knows it very well. He even suspects that in the near future, Kinlawo can easily destroy those so-called gods. Ancient One saw Odin's face with a look of eating knowledge. He couldn't help but smile. He put his eyes on the battlefield again. Kinlawo had almost consumed and absorbed the life force of the Father of Heaven at this time. The Father of Heaven now no longer has the previous high spirits. His whole body has become skinny. It was jagged and withered. The crown and scepter on its head were all cut into two. Facing Kinlawo's attack, it had no ability to resist. Seeing that the Heavenly Father was almost dead, Kinlawo didn't hesitate and stabbed out with a sword, piercing the Heavenly Father through. The power of life absorbed the last bit of his blood and energy into the long sword. Boom! With the explosion of blood and energy, the Heavenly Father turned into slag, and his will and soul were not left, and dissipated completely. At the moment when the Heavenly Father was destroyed, in an instant, buzz, the kingdom of heaven in the air made a series of buzzing sounds, and then began to collapse at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kinlawo didn't care at first, but soon he found that the buildings in the kingdom of heaven, including many things, were condensed by the power of faith. Now that the existence of faith has been killed, the power of faith naturally has no place to rely on. It is normal to dissipate, but the key is that if these powers of faith dissipate like this, it would be a pity. Chapter 77. Just when the two-winged and four-winged angels were about to burn out, and the six-winged angels were also in danger, the light above the holy pool shone, and a middle-aged man holding a scepter and wearing a crown appeared among the angels. His face was full of anger. After he looked at Kinlawo fiercely, with a wave of the scepter in his hand, golden rain fell down, forming a large rain curtain. These raindrops fell on the fluctuating fire, and they had no way to resist the terrifying high temperature. Soon they vaporized into golden mist. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man's face became darker. The scepter was waved again, and a larger golden rain curtain appeared. Kinlawo looked at the middle-aged man who kept raining and extinguishing the fire. Without thinking, he knew that the one must be the leader of the kingdom of heaven, the so-called Father. Kinlawo saw that the other party's leaders had taken action. He simply sat in the sky and watched the show. He had absolute confidence in his fluctuating fire. That was not pure fluctuating fire, but thunder fire with the breath of Thunder God. Kinlawo could feel that the opponent's strength was only at the same level as Odin-gu. And seriously speaking, there were even weaker ones than them. If such an existence could easily extinguish his flame, Kinlawo might as well buy a piece of tofu and die. The Heavenly Father summoned 7 rain curtains in a row. The fluctuating fire showed a little sign of weakening. Just when he wanted to summon the 8th rain curtain, the fluctuating fire suddenly disappeared without a trace. The Heavenly Father was delighted and thought that his magic was working. As a result, when he looked down, the scene in front of him made his eyes red. In a dark ravine, there was nothing but ashes. All his children were burned clean in the flames. Even the holy pool with the power of resurrection was burned clean. In other words, those angels were completely dead, and there would be no chance of resurrection. Wings of Faith middle. Judgment. Suddenly the Heavenly Father turned around, looked at Kinlawo with red eyes, and roared these words with gritted teeth. Then 2 golden wings appeared behind the Father. Each wing contained the pure power of faith. It must be said that there is no shortage of faith in heaven. They are really good at this. Kinlawo raised his eyebrows when he saw the golden wings. He could feel the terror of the power of faith, and this should be some kind of mental attack. If Kinlawo took it hard, he might get into some trouble. After all, it is quite scary when faith is gathered. Of course, it is only a little bit. The mind and fluctuations are engraved on the spiritual protection, which is absolutely incomparable. The gods can't really shake Kinlawo in spirit, let alone this little father. At most, his soul will be slightly shaken. At the moment when the father was waving his scepter and about to attack Kinluo, a dazzling colorful light burst out in the sky. Then Odin appeared next to him with a group of Asgard warriors. At the same time, Guyi and Old Carter, with the breath of hell and the demons in hell, were suspended on the other side. The scene was really spectacular. Heaven, hell, the divine domain, and the human world. These forces are definitely the top 4 forces in the scope of the 9 realms. They are also top-notch in the universe, not to mention the existence of Kinluo, the Hanger. These people together, plus Kinluo's strength, can completely attack the divine domain of any god. Chapter 421 Good words can't persuade the damn ghost. Odin, the king of the gods, Guyi, the supreme wizard of the earth guardian, and a fallen angel, looking at the several forces that suddenly appeared. The expression of the Father of Heaven changed again and again, especially when he looked at Odin's eyes filled with a little hatred. The reason why heaven has not appeared in the human world for a long time is that it only sent an angel Gabriel to maintain order in the human world, but it is inseparable from the king of the gods. At that time, Odin fought a war with the Father of Heaven in order to divide all the 9 realms into his own territory. The final result is naturally clear at a glance. The forces of heaven were directly expelled to the earth, and the Father of Heaven had to open up a small space, that is, the kingdom of heaven, to recuperate. Odin also destroyed half of the country, leaving several incurable injuries on himself. The entire Asgard took 100 years to recuperate before it regained its combat effectiveness. Now watching the man who defeated him again appear again, the Father of Heaven has a bitter heart. His power has been stronger than before after years of recuperation. He originally wanted to make a comeback and regain control of the earth. Before he had any plans, he felt a powerful sacred power. The Father of Heaven was immediately moved. If he could use this sacred power for himself, it must be like a tiger with wings. Maybe not only can it regain control of the earth, even the 9 realms can be taken into his pocket. The Father of Heaven mobilized all his strength and wanted to take down the sword of gods and demons in one fell swoop. After all, the earth is Odin's territory and he doesn't want any mistakes. The result is that he failed to steal the chicken and lost the rice. Not only did he fail to seize the sword of gods and demons, but he also lost all his men and was cremated by Kinluo. Father, go back. This is not a place where you can be so presumptuous. Odin saw everything that happened, but he didn't expect Kinluo to deal with those angels so quickly. The assembled tribesmen had no place to use their skills, but since they had assembled, it would be good to bring them all here to show their attitude. Odin, I can give up the sword, and I can even help you snatch it. I just ask you not to stop me from killing that damn human. Father stared at Odin, his eyes full of strong murderous intent. At this time, he no longer looked like a solemn father. He was just like a ferocious lone wolf. Cough cough cough. Hearing this, Odin was choked and coughed. He looked at Father in disbelief, with a look that was completely like looking at a father. Don't you know who he is? Odin patted his chest, and after catching his breath, he spoke in disbelief. Isn't he just a human? Is he the illegitimate son of God? Humphrey, no matter who he is, I will not let him go. Father did not look at Odin again, but stared at Kinluo and spoke. The wings of faith behind him exuded even more majestic power. Father, listen to my advice. Go back, because you and I have fought before. I don't want to watch you die. Odin looked at Anfu very seriously, and his words were full of regret, as if he had already anticipated the end of Father. Humphrey, Odin, you may not be my opponent now. You can't stop me. Father snorted coldly, his tone full of coldness. He was now overwhelmed by anger, and completely regarded Odin's kindness as a contemptuous attitude. Father, you, brother Odin, good words cannot persuade the damn ghost. It's no use saying these to him. He wants me to die. Why bother to stop me? Odin wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Kinluo's sudden words. Chapter 78. Everyone heard Kinluo's words, except for the Asgard brothers and Wanda's siblings. The expressions of the others have changed more or less. After all, the legend of the angel god has a considerable impact on these authentic natives. Luo Shan can even be regarded as a devout believer. Seeing the scene in front of him, he naturally couldn't accept it. fallen unclean soul, leave the Holy Land. This is a terrifying four-winged angel attacking Johnny, and the big wings flickered and smashed towards Johnny. At this time, Johnny would naturally not take the attack of the four-winged angel seriously. HMPH. Johnny snorted heavily, and the flames of the Holy Spirit around him condensed on the chain in his hand. Then he smashed the angel who attacked him fiercely. Bang! With a loud bang, the flames shot up into the sky, and then the angel was smashed out directly. Even a group of four-winged and two-winged angels were blown away. Johnny seemed to have hit a hornet's nest. Countless angels attacked Johnny. Although Johnny is now strong and has completely entered the level of a father-in-the-sky existence, however, those angels are not vegetarians either, not to mention their huge numbers. The strength of those six-winged angels is not bad, and they also know some kind of formation. Under the siege, Johnny became a little overwhelmed. After all, a good tiger cannot stand up to a pack of wolves. Of course, they are completely dreaming about killing Johnny. Tony and others were a little eager to move when they saw this. They didn't want to see Johnny being bullied by outsiders. However, Kinluo didn't say anything, and they didn't act on their own. Johnny, come back. Kinluo's voice was transmitted at this time. Get out. Johnny, who was surrounded by enemies, roared, and a pillar of fire burst out from his body, directly shaking away the angels around him. Then his figure flashed a few times and came to Kinluo's side. I'll deal with them. You don't have any objection, right? Kinluo looked at Johnny, who was in a rather embarrassed state beside him, and asked. Of course not, fuck them. Johnny gritted his teeth, and anger was completely written on his face. Kinluo nodded, and appeared in front of the monsters in a flash. Go back if you know what's good for you. My sword is not something you guys can covet, Kinluo said calmly. But the aura around him was rising. Soon the rings on the two-winged and four-winged angels became unstable. Obviously, these beings could not withstand the pressure of Kinluo's momentum. At this time, six-winged angels formed a hexagram array to block Kinluo. It was barely blocking Kinluo's momentum. Human, that is the holy sword of heaven. You can never touch it. Hand it over, and heaven will bless you. The leading angel slowly spoke, with a tone full of condescending meaning. It seemed that it was such an honor for Kinluo to hand over the sword of gods and demons to them. TSK, who gave you the courage to say such a thing? Kinluo narrowed his eyes, and the aura on his body became more and more dripping. The ghost hand was even more red, with blue veins bulging and the nails flashing cold light. The power of the devil? The face of the leading angel changed, and a dazzling white light emanated from his body. At the same time, the five angels around him also emanated a dazzling white light. The white light condensed together, and without saying a word, they smashed directly towards Kinluo. Looking for death, Kinluo's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and then the ancient short sword in his hand turned into a long sword. A sharp sword energy slashed out from Kinluo's hand. In an instant, the white light was cut into two sections, and then the sword energy continued to move. In an instant, all the angels in front of Kinluo were cut into two sections. Chapter 420 A Pot of Stew. The four major forces. Countless screams sounded. The body structure of these angels is different from that of normal people. Their bodies are extremely tough, and there is almost no fatal place. But even so, facing Kinluo's blow of breaking through the air and drawing the sword, they are still powerless to resist. Although one by one did not die immediately, but they all suffered the pain of the sword energy entering their bodies, and their bodies were still being strangled by the endless sword energy. Those six-winged angels were a little better. At least they could still crawl a few times. Light. Suddenly a dull and solemn voice sounded. Then the picturesque place turned into a pond full of soft light. There were waves of suction from the pond. Those angels that were broken into two sections were all suspended in the air and flew towards the pond involuntarily. Kinluo couldn't help but be secretly surprised when he saw this scene. According to his impression, angels seemed to be able to heal their bodies through the holy pond in heaven, and even resurrect. It is estimated that the pond in front of him is the so-called holy pond. Kinluo looked at the scene in front of him and did not stop it. Instead, He let the holy pond absorb these half-angels, but no one could see that a wave imprint in Kinluo's sea of consciousness had shattered. It turned into pure wave power and merged into the long sword in his hand. When the last angel was sucked into the holy pond, and the holy pond began to slowly disappear, at this time, Kinluo made a move. Extreme Flame Middle Dot Splitting Wave Sword. Kinluo swung the sword in his hand towards the disappearing holy pool. The terrifying fluctuating fire broke out. The sky-high flames instantly rushed into the holy pool. The holy pool that was about to disappear reappeared in the terrifying fluctuating fire. Not only that, the surrounding space also began to shatter. Gulp gulp. The entire holy pool has now completely turned into a sea of fire. The sky-high pillars of fire continued to burn, and because of the high temperature, the entire holy pool was completely boiling. In fact, the holy pool is nothing more than a manifestation of life energy. However, in the face of the pure high temperature of the fluctuating fire, no matter what energy, even the energy of the five gods, there is only one result of burning. You must know that this is the Extreme Flame Middle Dot Splitting Wave Sword released by Kinluo when he shattered an engraving. The power is naturally extremely terrifying. Everyone who looked at all this from afar, especially the indigenous people of the earth, they were more or less uncomfortable. After all, those burned existences can be regarded as their former beliefs, or childhood beliefs. As a result, their beliefs were all destroyed. It would be strange if they could feel comfortable. Johnny sighed and shook his head. The half-angels were tumbling in the holy pool that had turned into a sea of fire. They seemed to want to rush out, but unfortunately the Extreme Flame Middle Dot Splitting Wave Sword itself had some kind of sealing power. It would be a miracle if these angels could escape. Chapter 79. What's going on with this terrifying aura? Everyone's eyes flickered and they didn't understand what was going on. Only Yanata's face was full of desire at this time. She felt an incomparable delicacy on the god and demon sword. This delicacy can even be compared with Kinluo. However, at this moment, Kinluo soared into the sky, wearing Fipeng god armor, holding the ancient short sword, sitting in the void, right next to the god and demon sword. Anyway, it's only an hour. Kinluo simply planned to sit here and wait. He really wanted to see what kind of existence on the earth would come to plunder the god and demon sword. At this time, everyone soared into the sky. However, because they couldn't bear the god and demon aura emitted by the god and demon sword, they didn't get too close and stopped at a distance of about 2 or 3 meters from Kinluo. Kinluo saw this and waved his hand, and the wave force spread out, helping everyone to resist the power of the god and demon sword. Everyone then approached Kinluo. Brother Kin, what's going on? Is that your weapon? Spider-Man sat on Venom's body, looking at the god-demon sword in the sky with curiosity and asked, "It's my weapon. Something went wrong. It's being integrated now. I'm afraid it will attract some unusual beings. I'm afraid the banquet will have to be suspended," Kinluo said with a bit of apology. However, as soon as he said this, he found that instead of being disappointed by the interruption of the banquet, everyone's eyes were shining. "Isn't this great? It's just that I'm a little bored now. Let's have some enemies to liven up the banquet," Tony said with a little excitement on his face. That's right, when Asgardians hold banquets, they often use battles to liven up the atmosphere. Thor's face was full of excitement at this time. It's just that his eyes would glance at the god-demon sword from time to time, and there was a hint of desire in his eyes. Loki's state at this time was similar to Thor's, but he concealed it better than Thor. At least he didn't look at the god-demon sword frequently. At this time, Johnny couldn't help but look at the sword of gods and demons, and there was a faint flash of fire in his eyes. As for Ganata, needless to say, her saliva was already flowing like a river. Kinluo noticed this very keenly. He felt something was wrong, so he looked at a few people and asked, "What's the matter? Is this sword so attractive to you?" Kinluo said this. Thor and others all showed a bit of embarrassment on their faces. Loki lowered his head directly. He was really afraid that Kinluo would make trouble because of this. Of course, Kinluo was not so stingy. "The angel power in my body seems to be very eager for the power emitted by your sword, just like a hungry person seeing food." Johnny had nothing to be embarrassed about Kinluo, so he spoke directly. Thor and Loki nodded when they heard it. As for Ganata, she looked resentful. rubbed her stomach and said, "I've been hungry all the time. That sword is really delicious." "Brother Kin, the power in our sister and brother's body seems to be attracted by your god and demon sword." Wanda and Quicksilver also stood up at this time. Hearing their words, Kinlawo couldn't help but be a little surprised. Originally, he didn't care much about the attraction mentioned by the system. Now it seems that this attraction is really a bit big. Everyone around him will feel a desire for the god and demon sword. Not to mention the other existences. Maybe someone will really throw moths into the fire because they can't bear the attraction of the god and demon sword. However, the attraction of the god and demon sword seems to be only useful for existences with divine power or magic. For example, the Speed Force, the power of Asgard, chaos magic, and the power of angels. Ganada is not included. Her desire for energy does not distinguish between any powers. In this case, Kinlawo's god and demon sword is destined to attract some existences with the power of gods and demons. Wave imprint. Kinlawo turned on the wave imprint at this time, and then split the power of the wave imprint. They merged into the brows of Johnny and others, forming a barrier of wave force. "How do you feel now?" Kinlawo looked at Johnny and others and asked. Several people were stunned for a moment, then looked up at the Sword of Gods and Demons. Although the power of the Sword of Gods and Demons still shocked them, the special attraction just now disappeared without a trace. "Something is coming." Suddenly Johnny's expression changed slightly. Looking at the sky, his eyebrows twisted into a river. The source of this power made him feel very familiar. Chapter 419 The Kingdom of Heaven Comes. The Terror Angel Kinlawo Mai Parker and others also felt the power fluctuations coming from the sky at this time. It has to be said that this power is very good. It is not much worse than Mephisto at the beginning. The difference is that this power is a kind of sacred power, not the dark power of hell. It is a completely opposite existence. It is very clear who is coming. The group of guys in heaven. "Johnny, it seems that someone has come from your hometown." Kinlawo turned his head and looked at Johnny with a solemn face and said with a smile. Johnny's face suddenly froze when he heard this, and then he rolled his eyes at Kinlawo, and said helplessly, "What does it have to do with me?" Well, it's not wrong to say that he is my fellow countryman." Johnny was halfway through his words when he remembered that he had completely merged with the spirit of vengeance. "You are in me, I am in you. There is no difference between us. I'll go and take a look first." After saying that, two blue flame wings emerged from behind Johnny, and then soared into the sky and flew towards the sacred power. Kinlawo did not stop him. He also wanted to see if the people from heaven would still classify Johnny as the same. It is estimated that there is no play. After all, the spirit of vengeance has fallen. According to heaven, the spirit of vengeance is already an unclean existence. As expected, it didn't take a few minutes for Johnny's roar to be heard from the sky. "Asshole, get out!" Then the blue flames soared into the sky. The originally normal sky changed like water ripples. A very beautiful scene appeared, which can be described as picturesque. However, in that scene, there was a completely different horror. Johnny has completely turned into a ghost rider, emitting blue flames of the Holy Spirit, and he is surrounded by a group of monsters. That's right, they are monsters. Monsters with 2 wings, 4 wings, or even 6 wings. Of course, they just look like monsters. These are angels from heaven. It's just that these so-called angels are different from Kinlawo's impression. In Kinlawo's imagination, angels are all noble and holy beings. They are extremely beautiful, which can be seen from those hybrid angels. But these pure angels really opened Kinlawo's eyes. They are not human-shaped at all. Those angels have big eyes and 2 pairs of wings, and there are dense eyes on those wings, and golden halos surround them. It is definitely a nightmare for people with trypophobia. "What the hell are these?" Tony shuddered at this time, and said with disgust on his face. "What is it?" "Of course it is your most revered angel sister," Kinlawo said with a smile. "OMG, how could this be? Is this what an angel really looks like?" "Impossible." Chapter 80 Looking at these things, Kinlawo couldn't help but feel a little excited, although he felt a little strange in his heart. But it was soon covered up by excitement. Kinlawo didn't care about Long Kui's current state. After all, the sword spirit has not entered the sword yet, so Long Ku is in a sleeping state, and it is not surprising to have such performance. In any case, the sword spirit still has to rely on the sword as a carrier. Only in this way can she completely restore her strength and wake up. But which sword to let Long Ku enter made Kinluo a little troubled. Normally, there is nothing wrong with letting Long Ku enter the magic sword, but the magic sword is really a bit too metaphysical. Long Ku is staying in it, and there may be some accidents. The original Long Ku is already bitter enough, but when she entered the demon sword, she felt that the attributes were inexplicably inconsistent. Suddenly Kinluo thought of his sword, the ancient short sword. But as soon as this idea came into being, Kinluo gave up. Are you kidding? The ancient short sword is home to the power of a big turtle. Through various performances and the verification of death and others, the power of Anchuan in the ancient short sword already has some will. Kinluo doesn't think that Long Kui will be the opponent of that big turtle. Picking up the two long swords, he carefully felt the power on them. In an instant, Kinluo felt a tremor all over his body. The bottleneck of the sword god seems to have loosened a little. Both swords contain quite impressive power, and the power is basically from the same source. If the power of these two swords and the divine power and the Fipang god armor are all absorbed, by then, I am afraid that he will not only be able to reach the realm of the sword god, but even fully comprehend the extreme sword art. 10,000 swords return to the origin. Damn. The reward for this fishing is simply comparable to the demigod level. Wanda's buff is simply amazing. Lucky star. However, just when Kinluo was secretly excited, the system prompt sound suddenly rang in his ears. Ding. Detected that the host has the demon suppressing sword, the demon sword, and the dragon Kua sword spirit in his hand meet the standards for casting the god and demon swords. Let it be merged into the god and demon sword eyes. No. Fuck. Kinluo couldn't help but exclaimed when he heard this. His expression was not very excited, but full of weirdness. After a long silence, Kinluo said faintly, "System, do you have some problems?" I said why I always felt something was wrong just now, and now I react. Yes, these three rewards are combined into one. Isn't it the god and demon sword? It seems that you took it apart and gave it as a reward. System, I seriously suspect that you are messing with me now. Ding. The god and demon sword is not a legendary reward. This fishing cannot be directly fished out. Hearing the system's explanation, Kinluo's dissatisfaction that had just risen in his heart was extinguished instantly. The level of the god and demon sword actually surpassed the legendary level. This really made him unexpected. But think about it, after all, the god and demon sword is the first magic weapon in the Immortal Sword 3. Even in the entire world of Gian, the sword of gods and demons can be ranked in the top 3. System, that means, the sword of gods and demons is a demigod level existence. Kinluo couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, and at the same time he had a little expectation. With a demigod level weapon in hand, it would be a rhythm of going straight to heaven. However, the answer of the system made Kinluo never expect it. Ding. The sword of gods and demons cannot reach the demigod level. It can be called the sub-god level. It is between the legendary level and the demigod level. Nani? Kinluo felt a little confused, and he asked in disbelief, "System, wait a minute, what is the sub-god level?" When you said it, there were only legends and myths. Later, I tolerated the addition of a demigod level, but now there is another sub-god level. Will there be another micro-god level in the future? System, fuck you. Speak. System. Damn you. Are you kidding me? Chapter 418 Sword Fusion. Special attraction. Kinluo was like a shrew. He sprayed the system for more than 10 minutes, but he didn't get any response from the system. He couldn't vent his anger. He sat down fiercely, took out the wine and took a gulp. With the help of the hot wine, he barely suppressed the unhappiness in his heart. Alas, Kinluo sighed helplessly and shook his head. He had no way to deal with the system, so he had to cheat. Anyway, the power contained in the demon sword and the demon sword was enough to benefit him, not to mention the fusion. The result of the fusion of these two things would definitely not be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Moreover, Long Kui's fate was also settled. The god and demon sword was definitely the most perfect carrier for a Long Kui. System, I choose to fuse the god and demon sword, Kinluo said after taking back the wine gourd. Ding. Start fusion. Fusion time, 1 hour. because the god and demon chi will be generated after this fusion. It will attract some coveted things. Please solve it yourself. Hearing the words of the system, Kinlawo's eyes twitched. He seriously suspected that the aura produced by the fusion of the god and demon sword was specially added by the system. It was just to avenge him. There was no way that things had come to this point. Kinlawo could only accept it. He wanted to see what kind of existence this god and demon sword could summon. Who else on the whole earth dared to covet his things now? At this time, the two swords in front of Kinlawo flashed black and white chi, and then the two swords rotated and blended together like a Tai-Kai diagram, and the spirit of Long Kuet turned into a wisp of invisible force and merged into the middle of the two swords. Boom! The moment the three merged into one, the whole world couldn't help but tremble. A big hole was instantly blasted out of the roof of Kinlawo's apartment. Then the god and demon sword and the fusion sword into the sky. It came to the sky above the hero apartment. The whole sky became like a Tai-Kai diagram. It looked extremely shocking. Everyone who was attending the party downstairs was shocked by this scene. They never expected it. Kinlawo made such a big commotion in just half an hour. Chapter 81. But he still lived up to expectations, predicted countless futures for Captain Marvel, and found the future that made Captain Marvel most likely to hunt down Nick Fury. However, it was Kinlawo and Guyi's performance time. I have to say that Guyi's acting skills are really awesome, and Kingxia and Maggie Chung are just so-so. Captain Marvel didn't see any flaws at all. Everything is proceeding according to the trajectory of that future. Kinlawo's goal has been completely achieved. Nick Fury is not dead, but the probability of death is more than 90%. Compared with Kinlawo killing Nick Fury himself, letting Captain Marvel kill Nick Fury, this ending is probably even more unacceptable to Nick Fury, and before death, he will also experience the fear of death approaching. Put away your mind. Kinlawo smiled and fell asleep with May Parker, who was sweating. The night passed quickly. Yesterday's party was obviously not enjoyable, so under Tony's suggestion, everyone decisively decided to extend the banquet to 3 days. The people downstairs were still playing. Even Red Queen and Jarvis were playing some small games. Kinlawo was sitting alone in the study. He was rubbing his hands excitedly. Now it was time for the lottery. Even though he knew he would definitely get a legendary fishing rod, Kinlawo was still very excited. As the turntable appeared, the golden fishing rod appeared in the consciousness space. Without any hesitation, he threw the fishing rod directly into the 10,000 Worlds pool. Just when he wanted to leave for the banquet, the system's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Ding! Extreme fishing buff detected. This fishing time is greatly reduced. Kinlawo looked at the remaining time. His eyes almost popped out. The fishing time that originally required 24 hours was now less than 3 minutes. Fuck, 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 Kinlawo exclaimed, and the whole person instantly felt surrounded by happiness. Good guy. He never thought that the extreme speed buff provided by Quicksilver could still be used. Originally, he thought it had been used on mythical fishing. Unexpectedly, it could be multi-blessing, but now he is sure that this extreme speed buff has worked for mythical fishing. Now it is a complete surprise. Kinlawo sat on the chair again. He rubbed his hands excitedly. He calmed down the trembling in his heart and thought about the reward for this fishing. Apart from other things, the buff given by Wanda alone, it is destined to be a big harvest this time. That is to say, the buff does not work for mythical fishing. Otherwise, Kinlawo would rather save the fishing rod and keep Wanda's buff on mythical fishing. Watching the time pass by minute, the fishing rod is also shaking in the sea of consciousness. As time returns to zero, a small golden ball floated out of the water, surrounded by several balls of different sizes. Chapter 417 Sword Spirit Middle. Long Kui, God and Demon Sword. Ding. Fishing is over. Looking at the series of balls, Kinlawo couldn't help twitching. Inexplicably, he remembered Uncle Ben-Shan's early sketches, the real explanation of bullshit. As the golden light flashed, Chinese website Kinlawo's ears rang with a series of system prompts again. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Demon Sword from the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3. The original name of the Demon Sword is Zedon Divine Sword, which was forged by Emperor Fuxi from the soul of Zedon Divine Spring and fused with the divine iron of the meteorite. Later, it was given to Feng, and it contains incomparable divine power. Thing. Affected by multiple fishing extra reward 1 magic sword from the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 forged by Long Yang, the Prince of Zhang State in the spring and autumn period, and made of the virgin blood of Long Ku, the Princess of Zhang State. It is a living sword that can transform hatred, resentment, and fighting spirit into its own spiritual power, which is rarely matched in the 6 realms. This sword spans thousands of years and is intertwined with Jingxun's past and present lives. It is Jingxun's favorite treasure. Get additional reward 2 Sword Spirit Middle. Long Kui from the Legend of the Immortal Family 3 The Princess of Zhang State. In order to help her brother Long Yang defeat the enemy, she was willing to throw herself into the sword furnace to cast the magic sword, and later became the sword spirit of the magic sword. After entering the demon-locking tower with a magic sword, she gave birth to a second personality to protect herself. Get additional reward 3 Raise Fire and Burn the Sky 5 From the Legend of the Immortal Sword and Fairy 3 The head of Shushan secretly made a fire magic spell, which can release powerful magic to raise fire and burn the sky after activation. Get additional reward 4 Thunder Spirit Pearl from the Legend of the Immortal Sword and Fairy 3 One of the 5 spirit pearls condensed after Nuwa sealed the 4 gods and defeated and sealed Hanba, containing powerful lightning energy, controlled by Yunting, and then handed over to Jingxun. Qinluo listened to the system prompt sound. His eyes almost widened. Although I had expected a bumper harvest this time, but I never thought it would be such a bumper harvest. Good guy, Jingxun's precious things, except for Yang and Pawn, almost all of them seemed to be in his hands. Even my sister was brought here. To be honest, Qinluo never expected Long Kui to appear, and at the same time, he was even more excited. Anyone who is familiar with the Legend of Sword and Fairy 3 knows that mastering Long Ku is double the joy. Blue Long Ku is as gentle as water, and red Long Ku is like a raging fire. It's exciting to think about it. With a thought, the reward this time appeared in front of Qinluo. The hilt is emerald green, the blade is silver white, and it is a righteous demon-suppressing sword. The whole body is dark purple, with strange runes engraved on it, and it exudes an ominous magic sword. A transparent soul the size of a palm, 5 talismans containing powerful fire attributes, and a deep purple bead that exudes a majestic thunder and lightning power. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82. The Skrulls had already started to kill. He also knew how powerful Captain Marvel was, and knew that after she recovered her strength, even 100 of them would not be her opponent. Captain Marvel felt the power slowly rising in her body, although it was not even 1/10 of the original. But the power contained in it was extremely solid and pure. It was much smoother to mobilize than before. She vaguely remembered something. Although she had fainted before, she had not completely lost consciousness, so she vaguely heard some of Qinluo's conversations with Ancient One. She didn't understand it before, but now this situation made her understand something. She couldn't help but have a complicated feeling about Qinluo. From a certain perspective, the other party seemed not to be her enemy, but her benefactor. Captain Marvel, goodbye. The Skrulls pulled the trigger decisively. The azure beam shot out from the gun and rushed straight to Captain Marvel's head. Qinluo, who watched these scenes through his mind's eye, almost laughed out loud. Good fellow, the Skrulls are really ignorant, actually using magic cube weapons to deal with Captain Marvel. Isn't this just giving him energy? Captain Marvel is now just a little bit scared. The Skrulls' attack this time is equivalent to giving him this little bit. The next outcome is already doomed. Captain Marvel watched the beam of light getting closer and closer to her. She couldn't help but feel anxious. She was not sure whether she could still completely block the Skrulls' attack like before. Bang! With a muffled sound, the blue beam hit Captain Marvel's forehead. It exploded instantly. Of course, it was not Captain Marvel's head that exploded, but the beam that exploded, like a blue firework. The Skrulls were stunned for a moment. He looked at the scene in front of him with some disbelief. His body couldn't help but tremble. Nick Fury in the spaceship did almost the same thing as the Skrulls on Earth at this time. The power of the space gem did not dissipate after it exploded. Instead, it was suspended above Captain Marvel's head. Then, a scene that made Nick Fury and the Skrulls even more unbelievable happened. The blue energy turned into strands of light the size of a hair and flowed into Captain Marvel's 7 orifices. At this moment, it was like pouring a cup of ice water into a hot oil pan. The energy in Captain Marvel's body exploded instantly. Pure golden light burst out from her body. If Captain Marvel's previous transformation was a Super Saiyan transformation, now it is completely a Super Saiyan 2. There are faint flashes of electricity around her body. The violent energy made the whole building tremble. Crack, crack. After 2 consecutive crisp sounds of bones, Captain Marvel's armor returned to its original state. Die, die, die. The Skrull was completely panicked and kept pulling the trigger. 7 or 8 blue beams shot out, but the arrogance that had just approached Captain Marvel dissipated. In an instant, Captain Marvel came in front of the Skrull, grabbed the Skrull's head with one hand, and the Skrull's head exploded directly. Chapter 416 of QS. Goal achieved. Surprise. Seeing the Skrulls die in the hands of Captain Marvel, Nick Fury stood up suddenly, clenched his fists, and the red bloodshot in his one eye was almost oozing blood. At the same time, Captain Marvel threw the Skrulls' bodies aside like throwing away garbage. Then he seemed to sense something. He looked at the corner of the hall. A smile appeared on his face. Although she was smiling, that kind of smile would make anyone who saw it feel extremely cold. Nick Fury, you must not die. Otherwise, I really don't know what to do. Captain Marvel murmured, and the arrogance on her body seemed to feel her hatred and became more dazzling. Although Nick Fury was far away from Captain Marvel at this time, he still felt the fierce murderous intent through the screen. Nick Fury suddenly woke up, as if he remembered something. He immediately took out the special communicator from his windbreaker. Originally, he wanted to keep it as a souvenir. Now it seems that this thing is the invitation from the King of Hell. As long as this thing is there, it is not difficult for Captain Marvel to find her. Snap! With a crisp sound, Nick Fury crushed the communicator with his bare hands, and then threw it into the universe through the garbage port. After completing this, Nick Fury lay down on the chair, thinking about where his future should go. Without the weight of Captain Marvel, his original plan was in vain, and now he can only live in a low profile. Once something happens, he will not doubt that Captain Marvel will kill him directly. However, Nick Fury did not notice it at this time. A strange color flashed in the eyes of the Skrull who was operating the spacecraft. Captain Marvel's arrogance burst out with all her strength. Then the entire shield base was completely destroyed by the energy she burst out. Because of the absolute control of power, although the entire building was destroyed, it did not affect the surroundings in the slightest. If it were the former Captain Marvel, he would never be able to do this. And because of the special reason of changing the substitute, Nick Fury dismissed all the people of S.H.I.E.L.D., so there was no casualty. Feeling the change of her own power, Captain Marvel finally showed a smile on her icy face. She was very satisfied with her change, even if she paid some painful experiences for it. Then Captain Marvel's eyes turned cold, looked up at the sky, and then turned into a stream of light and disappeared in the sky. Now Captain Marvel has only one thought in his mind. He wants to twist off Nick Fury's boiled egg head. Feeling that Captain Marvel has left the Earth, Kinlawo put away his mind. The power of his mind can also be taken back by him. The whole person feels comfortable, whether it is mentally or physically. Kinlawo didn't think so much about dealing with Captain Marvel's problem. After all, it also provides him with a good buff. The legendary fishing is still a great improvement even for him now. Don't look at the monk's face, look at the buff. Kinlawo also wants to abuse her, then seal her power and let her live on the Earth. Without power, Captain Marvel would probably die in a dozen years. But soon he had an idea. He could feel that Nick Fury had left the Earth when he was fighting Captain Marvel. If Captain Marvel was asked to hunt down Nick Fury, the scene would be very exciting. So, before entering Hell, Kinlawo found the Ancient One and asked her to use the Time Stone to predict Captain Marvel's future. Although because of Kinlawo's excessive interference, The Ancient One had some difficulty in predicting Captain Marvel's future. Chapter 83. Ignoring the burning pain on her cheek, Captain Marvel continued to speak, especially when she said the last sentence. The bloody saliva sprayed on the Skrull's face. Trying to provoke me, you succeeded. I promised that guy that I would not kill you, but you will be punished as you deserve. The Great Skrull will not allow a waste like you to insult you. The Skrull carefully wiped the blood foam on his face and spoke with a sinister smile. After that, he raised his hand to grab Captain Marvel's arm and twisted it hard. Snap! With a crisp sound, Captain Marvel's arm suddenly bent strangely. Obviously, the Skrull twisted her arm alive. Unimaginable pain hit Captain Marvel's brain, but she bit her teeth tightly. She didn't make any sound, not hearing the beautiful sound she wanted. The look on the Skrull's face became more ferocious, but he smiled and gave Captain Marvel a thumbs up and said, "You are really strong. A person with the blood of the Kree and the Earthlings is really extraordinary." Crack! The Skrull grabbed Captain Marvel's other arm and broke it again. The sound of the broken bones made people's scalps numb. At this time, Captain Marvel was almost fainted from the pain. Her hair was completely wet with cold sweat, and the whole person was trembling in pain. Blood oozed from her mouth. She bit part of her teeth. At the same time, Kinluo, who returned to the hero apartment to continue the banquet, couldn't help but frowned slightly. Although he left, but the wave eye that was left behind has been paying attention to the movements over there. According to his perception, the energy in Captain Marvel's body has begun to gather again. It is purely the hidden energy in her body. Originally, he thought that the threat of death and the feeling of despair could force Captain Marvel's power out, but now it seems that his idea seems a bit simple. Although Captain Marvel's power has been recovering, the progress is still a bit slow. If this continues, maybe Captain Marvel's power will not recover yet. She had already been played to death by the Skrull, and the killing was not enough. The Skrull played a bit disgusting. At least Kinluo felt a bit disgusting. Big boss, you fart. Just when Kinluo was thinking about whether to take action to promote it, suddenly, he found that Captain Marvel's power recovery became faster and several times faster than before. This made Kinluo, who was originally ready to take action, stop and continue to wait and see. And shield. Captain Marvel, with his arms twisted strangely, stared at the person in front of him. The Skrull didn't care about Captain Marvel's eyes. He even enjoyed the other party's anger and indomitable spirit. Just when he wanted to take action again and break Captain Marvel's ankle, suddenly, a golden energy spread out from Captain Marvel's chest. Bang! The Skrull only felt a strong force coming, and then his body involuntarily stepped back a few steps. The base of his hands felt sore and numb. Your power, how is it possible? Haven't you lost your power? How could this happen? The Skrulls looked at Captain Marvel in doubt, and their words were full of panic. Captain Marvel also felt a little surprised at this time. She could feel that there was indeed a force in her body. This power was both strange and familiar, which made her stunned. At this time, Nick Fury, who was watching all this in the spaceship, stood up suddenly. His dark face turned slightly pale, and a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. Captain Marvel's power recovery was something he never expected. In fact, Captain Marvel didn't need to say it. When she appeared, the Skrulls scanned her body with advanced technology. After confirming that the other party no longer had any power, Nick Fury issued this order to kill the donkey. As a result, who would have thought that Captain Marvel, who had become a useless person, would burst out with extraordinary power again? Damn it. Kill her. Chapter 415. Power Recovery. How long will it take to reach the M79 galaxy? Nick Fury looked at the Skrulls not far away, and there was a hint of anxiety in his tone. It will probably take 706 Earth hours, the Skrulls said after operating the spaceship a little. Speed up. Nick Fury almost shouted these words. The Skrulls couldn't help but frown when they heard Nick Fury's tone. This commanding tone made him feel very uncomfortable, but thinking of his own race's plan, Nick Fury was a key link, so he held back the anger in his heart. He operated the spaceship a few more times. In an instant, Nick Fury felt a distinct push on his back, the push on the back that can make people feel excited or even panic. For Nick Fury now, it feels a little more relaxed. It's already at full speed. It will take about 300 hours to reach the M79 nebula, the Skrull said, looking at Nick Fury and adding again, it has reached its limit. If it accelerates again, the spacecraft engine will suffer irreversible damage. Nick Fury opened his mouth when he heard this, but didn't say anything else. He rubbed his temples with a headache. He never expected Captain Marvel to change like this. Others don't know how powerful Captain Marvel is. He knows it very well. Otherwise, he wouldn't use her as a trump card. He could have expected Captain Marvel to fail in the battle against Kingluo, but he never expected to lose so badly, even to the point of having no strength at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used his strongest trump card to deal with Kingluo. Captain Marvel's loss of ability was a big blow to Nick Fury, but it didn't make him feel discouraged. So he thought of the plan to sell Captain Marvel in an instant. With Captain Marvel's value, plus his relationship with the Skrulls, it wouldn't be difficult to rebuild a strong team in the universe. As long as he is given a chance, he can return as a king. Of course, he does not plan to return to Earth in the short term. He knows in his heart that he has caused so many things. Once he appears in front of Kingluo, the only outcome is death. Don't forget that Kingluo dares to kill even the 5 elders of the parliament, let alone he is the director of SHIELD. The new plan was originally well planned, but who would have thought that Captain Marvel had an incredible change? She actually recovered some strength, even if the energy recovered from the test data is very limited. But this sign is enough to scare Nick Fury. As mentioned before, Nick Fury is very aware of Captain Marvel's strength. He sold him out without hesitation. With Captain Marvel's temper, he will definitely retaliate against him after recovering his strength. At that time, let alone forming a new army, it is a question whether he can save his life. In the future, I am afraid that he can only wander in the universe to avoid Captain Marvel's pursuit. Damn it. Damn it. Why did your power recover? Why? Can't you just die like this? Nick Fury's one eye turned red, and a few drops of cold sweat could be seen faintly on his forehead. That was all because of fear. The Skrulls on Earth received Nick Fury's order. Without thinking, they took out a special firearm and pointed it at Captain Marvel's head. In fact, Nick Fury didn't even need to say anything when Captain Marvel burst out with power. Chapter 84. Fortunately, there were no homeless people around. Otherwise, she would be lying there without any resistance, and the scene would be wonderful. The alley is not far from SHIELD, only about 100 meters away. But this distance seems particularly far away for Captain Marvel, who once could travel across the universe. It took about 7 or 8 minutes to walk to the gate of SHIELD. Just when Captain Marvel was thinking about how to get in, the door in front of her suddenly opened, and an elevator appeared in front of her. Seeing this scene, Captain Marvel couldn't help but smile bitterly. She really didn't know how to face Nick Fury now. The remaining pride in her heart kept telling her that she didn't want her to meet Nick Fury in this low situation, especially thinking of her high-spirited and arrogant appearance not long ago. Her cheeks couldn't help but feel hot and stinging. After gritting her teeth, Captain Marvel finally walked into the elevator. Her pride had been beaten away by Kingluo, and her instinctive desire to survive forced her to find Nick Fury. After all, she needs to rest now, otherwise her life will be in danger. And on Earth, the only place where she can rest and recuperate is Nick Fury. The elevator soon reached the top and came to Nick Fury's office. The elevator door opened. Captain Marvel took a step, only to feel her feet soften, and then the whole person fell forward. At this moment, a rough black hand dragged her body. A familiar voice sounded in her ears. "Carol, what's wrong with you?" "I lost completely. Please help me arrange it. I need to rest now." "I'm afraid I need you to take care of me for a while." Captain Marvel smiled bitterly and said her failure directly. She didn't want to find some reasons to cover up her failure, and she disdained to do so. "You lost so badly? Is he really so powerful?" Nick Fury didn't rush to help Captain Marvel to rest, but asked in doubt. "Yes, he is really powerful. I am like a child in front of him. I have no resistance at all." Captain Marvel still smiled bitterly. "How were you injured? How long will it take to recover?" Nick Fury's face had slowly turned gloomy. Captain Marvel, who was supported, did not see Nick Fury's expression at this time because of the angle. After a long silence, Captain Marvel slowly said, I don't know. Maybe a few months. Maybe I can't recover in my lifetime. My power has been plundered. The moment she said this, Captain Marvel felt a chill all over her body, and a bad premonition rose in her heart. This premonition appeared very abruptly. It even made Captain Marvel feel at a loss. She slowly turned her head and saw the cold light flashing in Nick Fury's one eye. "Nick, are you going to kill me?" Captain Marvel looked at the increasingly cold eyes, seemed to understand something, and spoke with a trembling voice. "Alas, Carol, no, Captain Marvel, you shouldn't come back. In fact, your head has a very high value in the universe." Nick Fury sighed and slowly said something that made Captain Marvel shiver all over. "Why?" The three words asked by Captain Marvel made Nick Fury feel childish and a little funny. "It's just your value. There is no need for any reason. If your power is still there, I will do my best to save you, but your power is no longer there. But your life still has a lot of value. You are too nosy in the universe and too self-righteous. Do you know, there are countless races in the universe who want to take your head." Captain Marvel only felt that something in his heart was broken at this time. Everything in front of him became blurred. Then his throat felt sweet, and a mouthful of blood spurted out directly, spraying Nick Fury's face. It was also at this moment that Captain Marvel found that Nick Fury's face was slightly stiff, and then a familiar green face flashed by. You are a Skrull?" Captain Marvel asked in disbelief. Nick Fury wiped the blood off his face, and his stiff face changed for a while, and then turned into an ugly green face. "Yes, I am indeed a Skrull. Long time no see." The Skrull had a smile on his face, and he looked at Captain Marvel as if he was looking at an old friend. At this time, a glimmer of hope flashed in Captain Marvel's eyes, and her originally gray face seemed to have regained some vitality. She stared at the Skrull and said, "Where is Nick Fury?" "If he knew what you were going to do, All this was arranged by Nick Fury. Although I also think he did a little too much. There is nothing wrong with some things being a little too much. By the way, there are some things I want to say." "Now he has seen all your performance." The Skrull interrupted Captain Marvel before she finished speaking, and told the truth that made Captain Marvel fall to the bottom again. Just as he said, at this moment, in a hidden spaceship in the universe, Nick Fury was wearing beach pants, revealing his strong upper body muscles, looking indifferently at everything that happened and S.H.I.E.L.D. Asshole, asshole, asshole. In extreme anger, Captain Marvel broke free from the control of the Skrulls and punched him directly in the face. Snap! There was only a crisp sound, and then the Skrulls easily caught Captain Marvel's fist. TSK, what a weak fist. Who would have thought that this is the fist of Captain Marvel, who is feared by countless races in the universe? The Skrulls showed a mocking smile on their faces, and their white teeth even made Captain Marvel feel a little dazzling. However, no one noticed it, not even Captain Marvel herself. A pure golden luster flashed across her battlesuit on her chest. Anyone who saw it would probably think that this golden luster was caused by the overhead light. Chapter 414 Skrulls, messed up damn Skrulls. Captain Marvel punched again. This time the power was obviously much greater than the last time, at least reaching the power of an ordinary person. The result was no surprise. Although the Skrulls are not such a powerful race, their physical talents can also make them reach the limit of human beings. It can be said that the enemy Captain Marvel is facing at this time is completely at the level of Norman Osborn. It's just that there is no metal exoskeleton and pumpkin bomb to assist, so Captain Marvel's punch was still easily blocked by the Skrulls. Sure enough, anger is a very powerful force. Now you can use such power. It's painful, right? The Skrulls still said with a playful look on their faces. At this time, he looked at Captain Marvel with an expression like a bare child seeing a favorite toy. Suddenly, the Skrulls seemed to hear something. His brows frowned slightly, and then he took off the black headphones on his ears, with a bit of dissatisfaction in his eyes. "You know, Nick Fury came to me just now." "Guess what he said to me?" the Skrull said, and kicked Captain Marvel away with a whip kick. Puff. Captain Marvel, who was weak, felt as if his internal organs were about to break after such a trauma, and a large mouthful of black and red blood spurted out of his mouth again. "He told me not to go too far. Don't kill him, otherwise, your value will be reduced." The Skrull smiled and walked in front of Captain Marvel, and slapped her face with his green palm in an insulting manner. Captain Marvel stared at the scroll in front of him, forced a sneer, and then raised his weak palm and smashed it towards the scroll's face. But that kind of almost slow-motion fist, how could it be possible to hit the scroll? Do you know? In the universe, what do you, Skrulls, call you? Captain Marvel's eyes were full of unyielding color, staring at the scroll in front of him, and spoke weakly. Haha, you don't need to remind me, I know. Slap. The scroll sneered and slapped Captain Marvel's face. Captain Marvel's cheeks swelled up instantly. Parasitic ... insects. You deserve to be expelled from your home ... garbage. You became ... refugees ... purely ... because ... of yourselves ... a bunch of bugs. Chapter 85. Old Carter didn't say anything. His eyes slightly lowered. He now said that he didn't want to talk to Guyi, the old bastard. There is something. I have to use the power of the space gem later. Kinluo saw Guyi was about to leave, and hurriedly said. Guyi was stunned when he heard it, and after looking at Kinluo, he looked at the distraught Captain Marvel and seemed to understand something. He frowned slightly and said, it's not good to do this. If you are afraid that she will do something, you can just leave her in hell. Oh, I have my considerations. You will know when the time comes. Help me. Kinluo waved his hand and said, okay. Seeing that Kinluo said so, Guyi didn't say any more nonsense, but she didn't mean to take out the space gem. She just said helplessly, the space gem is now integrated with me. It's a bit troublesome to take it out. What do you want to do? Just tell me directly. I will do it. That's even better. I'm just too lazy to do it. Kinluo saw that Guyi wanted to help, and naturally he was happy to see it. Old Carter was confused at this time. He asked in confusion, Kinluo, what are you going to do? Why do you want to use the space gem? Can you explain it clearly? I don't understand your conversation. Chapter 412. Seizing power and turning into a mortal. Kinluo did not answer Old Carter's question directly. Instead, he set his eyes on the distraught Captain Marvel, with a strange smile on his lips. Captain Marvel seemed to have sensed something bad. Suddenly, he shuddered all over, raised his head suddenly, and looked at Kinluo vigilantly. What are you going to do? Captain Marvel clenched her fists, and a faint light emanated from her body. Even though she knew the gap between herself and Kinluo, resistance was futile. But it did not mean that she would be slaughtered. Don't do anything. There will be a penalty for losing. Looking at some things you don't know, I won't kill you, but I won't let you go easily. Kinluo took a step forward and put his hand on Captain Marvel's shoulder. In an instant, Captain Marvel felt that the hand pressing on her shoulder was not a hand, but a mountain. If she hadn't tried her best to hold on, she would have fallen to her knees. As for the energy in her body, she couldn't use it at all, and it was tightly blocked. What do you want to do? Captain Marvel gritted her teeth, and her bloodshot eyes were full of panic. A large part of your power comes from the power of the space gem. Seeing the doubt flashing in Captain Marvel's eyes, Kinluo spoke again. Its other name is the Cosmic Cube. Captain Marvel heard this familiar name, and her pupils couldn't help but shrink. She knew what the Cosmic Cube was. You have been strong for too long with this power, but you have to pay it back after all, so please hand over your power. Kinluo raised his hand to Master Guyi after saying this. Thank you, Master Guyi. Guyi didn't waste any words after hearing this, and stepped directly to Captain Marvel. The space gem at the center of his eyebrows flashed a dreamy blue. At this moment, Captain Marvel's body also lit up. No, don't. Captain Marvel shook her head desperately, as if she wanted to stop the loss of power in her body in this way. Guyi formed seals with both hands, and then took a step forward, pressing her palm directly on Captain Marvel's head. In an instant, Captain Marvel felt her whole body stiffen, and then the power in her body that had accompanied her for decades began to slowly leave her body. I saw a wisp of blue light drifting out of Captain Marvel's 9 orifices, and her 9 orifices also turned blue. Those energies went straight to the center of the eyebrows of Master Guyi. Kinluo saw this scene and couldn't help but feel a little surprised and spectacular. Why do I feel like I'm being sucked out of the soul in the game? But why do I feel like I'm a villain? As the power of the space gem left Captain Marvel's body twitched involuntarily, and her face was full of pain. Obviously, it was not a good thing for her to be stripped of these powers. About 5 minutes later, Master Guyi took a half step back. The space gem between her eyebrows became brighter than usual. It was obvious that after the power in Captain Marvel's body returned, it was also a great supplement to the space gem. Compared with the space gem, Captain Marvel was not so good at this time. Her face was like gold paper, and her spirit and energy were almost at their lowest point. The whole person seemed to be more than 10 years older. At this time, she could really be called an old lady. Captain Marvel rolled her eyes and fainted, and the whole person fell limply to the ground. The power in her body is not all the power of the space gem, and part of it has been transformed into her own power. Even if most of the power is drawn out, it will not have a big impact on her. Maybe she will get a blessing in disguise and become stronger than before. What's the point of you doing this? Guyi looked at Kinluo at this time, and couldn't help but speak out of curiosity. Kinluo naturally thought of what Master Guyi said. In fact, don't look at the power of the Infinity Stones, but it can really reach the Father level, or even higher level. Almost no one would rely on the power of the Infinity Stones. They all have their own real power. For example, Ancient One, Mephisto, Dormammu, Odin, the Five Gods, etc. They would not really rely on the power of the Infinity Stones, but just use them as a tool. And Captain Marvel has not become a useless person without the power of the gems. She has a power different from the gems in her body, and a lot of space power has been assimilated by this power. Now Captain Marvel is in the process of turning into a cocoon. When she breaks out of the cocoon and becomes a butterfly, she will completely stand firm at the level of the Father God, and may even surpass Johnny. The reason why Kinluo did not kill Captain Marvel can be regarded as helping her. In addition to the face of buff, there is also this little calculation of his own. Some troubles have left the earth now. I may have some things here recently, and I can't take care of looking for the guy in the universe, so I want someone to help me open the way. At least I won't let that troublesome person have a comfortable life. Kinluo smiled strangely and spoke as if he was playing a riddle. Forget it. Whatever you want, I'm going to get busy. Guyi shook his head, feeling a little chilled by Kinluo's smile, and disappeared in a flash. Then I'll get busy too, Kinluo. Call me if you have anything. Old Carter saw Guyi leaving, said hello to Kinluo and left straight away. The good show was over, and there were still many things waiting for him to deal with in hell. Kinluo grabbed the unconscious Captain Marvel and left the place in a flash. In an alley near a certain base of S.H.I.E.L.D., Kinluo dragged the unconscious Captain Marvel out slowly. After arriving at the entrance of the alley, Kinluo put Captain Marvel on the trash can, and pointed his sword finger directly at her forehead. Captain Marvel, who was still in a coma, suddenly opened her eyes, looking at Kinluo in front of him. He couldn't help but shudder. Then he felt a sense of weakness in his hands and feet, and the sense of emptiness when the power in his body disappeared. Asshole, what did you do to me? Captain Marvel gritted his teeth and stared at Kinluo and said, Your question is really easy to be misunderstood. Forget it. Don't think too much. I just took back the power that doesn't belong to you. Now I'll let you go. Kinluo said, pointing to the building not far away and said, If you don't want to die, go find Nick Fury to recuperate for a while. He is in that building now. And please say a word for me. He's dead. Chapter 413 Utilization Value. Real and fake braised eggs in a dark and damp alley. Captain Marvel widened his eyes and lay on the smelly trash can, quietly waiting for his physical strength to recover. But Kinluo had disappeared long ago. Captain Marvel didn't know how long he had been lying on this torturous trash can. Finally, he slowly recovered some strength, forced himself to stand up, and staggered towards the SHIELD building. In fact, Captain Marvel should be thankful. Chapter 86. Kinluo couldn't help shaking his head when he saw Captain Marvel like this. He hadn't said that he hadn't added the buff yet. Otherwise, with those slaps just now, Captain Marvel would have died. Suddenly, Captain Marvel raised her head, and a sickly redness appeared on her gray face. Because the red bloodshot in her eyes was too dense, her eyes almost completely turned red. Kill you, Captain Marvel murmured, propping up her body to stand up. and the dimmed golden flames burst out again. This time, the golden flames seemed to be free, and instantly reflected the entire mirror space into gold. "What did you say?" Kinlawo showed a smile on his face, looking at Captain Marvel with unreserved mocking eyes. "I said, I'm going to kill you." Captain Marvel roared, and the golden flames began to compress her body crazily. The violent orange-yellow energy almost condensed into substance around her body. It seemed to have turned into a planet. It's just that the stars are in the middle of a planet, and the orange-yellow sphere is Captain Marvel. "Yo, this is going to fight to the death." Feeling the violent energy erupted by Captain Marvel, Kinlawo's smile deepened. This energy was probably the same level as when Odin controlled the Destroyer to attack the Devourer of Planets. It was almost a full-strength attack of the top father level. Such power would not be a big threat to Johnny and old Carter, let alone Kinlawo. Captain Marvel didn't know this. Now she had only one thought. Even if she died, she would drag this terrifying man in front of her to death. Boom! The golden sphere burst out with dazzling light, forming a sky-high light column that bombarded Kinlawo. The entire mirror space was affected by this power and trembled slightly. Of course, it was only a slight tremor. Facing the huge orange energy column, Kinlawo calmly put the ancient dagger on his waist. At this moment, the ancient dagger turned into the appearance of Tang Hengdao. "Draw the sword and cut." The extremely sharp ring-shaped sword energy burst out from Kinlawo's body. The energy column was cut like tofu in front of this sword energy. This force didn't even have a chance to burst out, and was directly annihilated by the sword energy in this mirror space. In less than a second, the energy that Captain Marvel desperately burst out was completely annihilated, and a sharp long knife was placed on her neck. Chapter 411 Master Ancient 1. You have learned bad things. The cold blade made Captain Marvel's neck feel a sharp pain. She looked down with some trembling. She only felt a dry throat, but she didn't dare to make any swallowing movements. She was afraid that if her neck moved, her head would move. Captain Marvel had no doubt about the sharpness of Kinlawo's blade. Captain Marvel didn't know how long she hadn't felt this kind of powerlessness and the feeling of dying at any time. She thought she wouldn't be afraid of death, because she should have died many years ago. But now when she really felt the blade of death, she realized that she was not as fearless as she imagined. She felt the fear of death. "Still fighting?" Kinlawo looked at Captain Marvel with fear in his eyes and asked with a smile. He knew that Captain Marvel had already given up. However, Kinlawo did not mean to look down on her. "If you are afraid of death, follow your heart. Don't tremble." "I lost." Captain Marvel smiled bitterly. Her eyes were full of gray. It was in sharp contrast to her high spirits when she just appeared. "Very good," Kinlawo said and directly retracted the long sword, which changed into the appearance of an ancient dagger in his hand, and then disappeared without a trace. "I can think that Nick Fury will ask you to come. To be honest, you came a little later than I thought. If you came a few months earlier, maybe you can really get rid of me easily." Kinlawo still had that smiling look, but in his heart he couldn't help thinking of his resistance and fear when he just released SHIELD. The power of Captain Marvel at the time was a mountain in his heart. Who would have thought that in a few months, this mountain would become a pile of sand in front of him? As long as he wanted, he could kick it apart with one kick. Sure enough, the most NB is still the cheater. Captain Marvel didn't care about Kinlawo's words. She was still immersed in failure. Even if she heard it, she would probably sneer. "Are you kidding? She became so powerful in just a few months. Then she has lived in vain for dozens or hundreds of years. The battle is over. Go out," Kinlawo said, sending a signal to Guyi through his mental power. Soon the mirror space shattered inch by inch, disappearing like a mirror flower and water moon, and Kinlawo and Captain Marvel stood in hell again. In fact, it is not difficult for Kinlawo to break the mirror space. The main thing is that it is a bit troublesome, and after breaking it, Guyi will be more or less affected. "Done?" Guyi looked at Kinlawo and said calmly. "Of course, it's a matter of minutes," Kinlawo said with a relaxed look. After all, for him now, a Captain Marvel is really not a big deal. "Well," Guyi nodded slightly after receiving Kinlawo's answer, and then stretched out his hand to old Carter and said, "You lost, Carter. Give me the demon code." Old Carter took out a palm-sized dark purple book with a painful look on his face, touched the cover with pity, and handed it to Guyi. Then he looked at Kinluo with a rather resentful look. Kinluo's scalp tingled when he saw that look. No, what's the situation? Did you make a bet? Kinluo was a little scared by the look of old Carter, and couldn't help asking. Ah, a bet. I bet with Master Guyi whether you can end the battle within 5 minutes. I said yes. Master Guyi said number. The bet is the demon code, my most precious collection. Old Carter said a little gloomily, and his eyes kept glancing at the book in the hands of the Ancient One. He was so reluctant to let it go. After learning the whole story, Kinluo said with a gloating look, you deserve it. You bet with me, and you will lose to death, you old immortal. No, Kinluo, with your current strength, is it so difficult to defeat a little girl who is a little weaker than Johnny? It takes so long, old Carter said with a look of are you kidding me? I can't teach some ignorant guys a lesson. Kinluo rolled his eyes, and said to old Carter in a frustrated tone, you are stupid, but you dare to bet with Master Guyi. Don't you know that the sky has the time stone? It only takes a few minutes for him to predict the future. The last person who bet with Master Guyi was Mephisto. Think about it. Besides, the mirror space belongs to others. Master Guyi wants to do something to make me come out later. Is it difficult? Hearing Kinluo's words, old Carter's face turned pale. For the first time, he found that his IQ was so worrying. Master Guyi, you have learned bad things. Old Carter looked at Master Guyi who was reading the Demon Codex for a long time and said this, be willing to accept the loss. Don't listen to Kinluo's nonsense. The time stone is useless to him, and I can't predict his future, Guyi said without raising his head. Old Carter was completely speechless at this time. If it weren't for his good gambling character, if he couldn't beat Guyi. Well, the point is that he couldn't beat Guyi. If nothing else, I'll go deal with the 16th level of hell first. It's almost finished now. Guyi put away the Demon Codex, looked at Kinluo and old Carter and said, Chapter 87. In her mind, she couldn't help but think of what Nick Fury said before she left. She didn't take it seriously at first. Now it seems that the opponent's strength is beyond her imagination. It can be said that he is the most powerful enemy she has ever encountered. Kinluo, what's going on? You don't want to fight her here, do you? Old Carter said helplessly. Yes, the world can't bear my battle, and many innocent people will die. Kinluo nodded and said as if it should be. After getting the affirmative response, old Carter first looked at Captain Marvel with pity, and then said more helplessly, it's not easy to build hell, Kinluo. Can't you let my old bones suffer less fatigue? Kinluo was a little embarrassed when he heard this. It was said that the reconstruction of this new hell was almost all the credit of Guyi and old Carter. People are about to complete the construction, and they are destroyed by a battle. It's really not good. Captain Marvel only felt a burning anger in his chest at this time. Whether it was the look in old Carter's eyes just now, or Kinluo's attitude of ignoring her, Captain Marvel felt that her self-esteem was greatly insulted. Asshole! Captain Marvel's energy burst out again, and she rushed towards Kinluo like a bull. The violent force made the surrounding space a little distorted, and at the same time, there were dark space cracks spreading along with the traces she left. However, at this moment, the surrounding space suddenly stabilized by force. It was like a rag being smoothed by a big hand. Kinluo, you go to the mirror space to fight. Don't make trouble here. Guyi's voice sounded in the air, and then Kinluo felt that the world around him was reversed, and then Captain Marvel, who was originally rushing towards him, rushed in the opposite direction. Come on, the map has changed again. What's the matter with this inexplicable feeling of disgust? Kinluo couldn't help but smile when he saw this. At the same time, he became interested in Guyi's magic. Apart from anything else, the ability of the mirror space is really good. Once there is a battle, it will not hurt innocent people. What kind of power is this? Marvel barely stopped her charge, looking at the world where the heaven and earth were reversed, with a flash of horror in her expression. She could feel that this should be the product of some kind of power. The key is that this power can silently affect her and pull her into it. How could Captain Marvel not be surprised? It's just the power of magic, Captain Marvel. Your knowledge is just some races that stay in the universe. Don't underestimate everyone. There are many people on the earth who can defeat you. You are not invincible. While Kinluo was explaining Captain Marvel's doubts, he did not forget to taunt her again. Captain Marvel had already made up his mind to kill Kinluo, so he didn't care about Kinluo's taunting at all, but just gritted his teeth and rushed towards Kinluo. For someone as proud as Captain Marvel, it's actually quite easy to deal with. Just destroy her pride. Everything will be over. Bang! Kinluo didn't dodge, and directly confronted Captain Marvel. As a result, Captain Marvel flew backwards, while Kinluo still stood there, without moving at all. Even his clothes were not wrinkled at all. Chapter 410, Easy and Tyrannical. Doubting life. How could such a thing happen? Marvel looked at Kinluo in disbelief. She felt that all this was like a dream. Her charge could easily break through even the Starfleet, but now even a human can't shake it. What made her even more unacceptable was the bursts of severe pain from her arm. This severe pain made her feel very unfamiliar. She didn't know how many years she hadn't experienced this kind of pain. Seeing the look in the man's eyes in front of her, Captain Marvel felt inexplicably familiar. Suddenly she woke up, and when she looked at those weak beings, it seemed that they also had this look. Impossible. Impossible. You can't be so powerful. Absolutely impossible. Captain Marvel kept roaring, and a golden aura burst out from her body. At the same time, her eyes turned white, and her hair kept floating in the air with the impact of this aura. Oh, Fighting Nation, Super Saiyan transformation? Kinluo couldn't help but exclaimed when he saw Captain Marvel's transformation. But then he shook his head and said with a little regret, "It's a pity that you are not a real Super Saiyan. Otherwise it might be really troublesome." Captain Marvel obviously didn't understand what Kinluo meant by these words. What is the Super Saiyan Fighting Nation? She has been wandering in the universe for so many years and has never heard of it, but the contempt in Kinluo's words was still captured by her. This alone is enough. For a proud existence like Captain Marvel, despising her is no different from killing her. Ah! Captain Marvel roared to the sky, and the arrogance around her burst out. Then the whole person rushed towards Kinluo at a high speed like an arrow from a string. The speed was so fast that it completely surpassed Quicksilver, who had super speed, and even 3 times faster. However, just when her fist was about to fall in front of Kinluo, it was slapped away by Kinluo. In an instant, Captain Marvel froze in front of him. Kinluo ignored Captain Marvel's face that was full of doubt. He just said with a slightly disgusted tone, "Too slow, faster." Kill. Captain Marvel was completely defeated, and the golden fist flashing with arrogance hit Kinluo's face even faster. Bang! Faster, faster, bang. Didn't you eat? You are so slow. Faster, bang. How did you survive in the universe when you are so slow? Bang. With this little strength, you want to meddle in other people's business? You are really lucky that you are not dead. Bang. Faster, 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 faster. Pa, pa, pa. Captain Marvel herself has forgotten how many times she has attacked. Perhaps hundreds of times, or even thousands of times. No matter how powerful the energy she bursts out, or how fast she bursts out, Kinluo's slap can land accurately on her fist. This also caused Captain Marvel's fists to be so swollen that the shape of the fists could no longer be seen. Blood kept dripping from her nails, which looked extremely horrifying. When she felt the severe pain in her arms and hands, causing her to be unable to raise her arms again, Captain Marvel came back to her senses, her eyes dull, and she couldn't help muttering to herself, Why is there such a big gap? Actually, I'm not very strong, it's just that you are too weak." Kinluo didn't hesitate to make up the knife again. The sniper of words pierced Captain Marvel's tattered self-esteem fiercely. "Too weak? I'm too weak?" Captain Marvel retreated again and again, looking at her swollen fists, her eyes full of confusion. "Isn't it obvious enough now? Actually, I use a sword, and I am not very good at bare-handed fighting. It's a pity that you are not even qualified to let me draw my sword now," Kinluo said, and with one hand flipped, the ancient short sword appeared in his hand. As soon as the sword was in hand, the momentum around Kinluo changed drastically again. Captain Marvel is not a fool. She can naturally see how huge the difference is between Kinluo with a sword and Kinluo without a sword. Puff. Perhaps it was because of anger, or because she doubted her life to the extreme. Captain Marvel's face turned pale, and then she spurted out scarlet blood. Chapter 88. Nick Fury knew that he had to leave. If he didn't leave now, he might not be able to leave. Regardless of whether Captain Marvel could defeat Killua, he didn't intend to take risks. After all, if something unexpected happened, it would be fatal. Nick Fury came to a secret room and walked out immediately, without even taking a minute. Nick Fury sat back in the monitoring room with a cold face. No one except Killua noticed that a transparent spaceship soared into the sky and quickly left the Earth. Do you know me? Captain Marvel frowned and looked at Killua, with a somewhat surprised expression. As for Killua saying that she was sent by Nick Fury, Captain Marvel didn't care at all. She just couldn't figure out how an Earthling could know her name. You know, when she left the Earth, the city hadn't been completely built yet. Detected important plot characters: Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, get special buff, legendary fishing. The next time you draw a lottery, you will definitely get a legendary fishing rod. Hearing the system's prompt sound, Killua's mouth corners slightly raised, and he couldn't help but feel secretly happy. Captain Marvel is indeed extraordinary, with legendary rewards and Wanda's buff bonus. The harvest of this fishing trip is definitely not small. Captain Marvel frowned when she saw Killua's smile. For some reason, she hated Killua's smile. Human, why do you threaten the safety of the Earth? Do you want to destroy this planet? Captain Marvel shouted, and the coldness in her eyes became more intense. There was no doubt that this guy would take action directly in the next moment. Haha, Nick Fury told you? It's ridiculous. That guy actually said that I threatened the safety of the Earth. Killua sneered, his face full of sarcasm. From a certain perspective, what Nick Fury did on Earth is much more cruel than Killua, and many things were caused by him. Captain Marvel narrowed his eyes slightly, and a dazzling light flashed on his body. Obviously, this is going to take action. For Captain Marvel, it is quite difficult to spend so much time with Killua. After all, Captain Marvel is a standard type of person who doesn't quarrel when he can take action. Go to hell, human! Captain Marvel shouted in a low voice, and rushed towards Killua at a very fast speed. However, when her fist was about 1 meter away from Killua, 3 people appeared in front of Killua in an instant. Ganada, Johnny, and Tony attacked almost at the same time, not only blocking Captain Marvel's attack, but also forcing her back. Spider-Man and others also stood beside Killua at this moment, staring at Captain Marvel with unkind eyes. Venom also turned into a spider suit at this time, covering Spider-Man's body. A bunch of bastards. Captain Marvel patted the blue flame flashing on his shoulder. His eyes were full of solemnity, but he didn't lose the wind at all, and cursed with gritted teeth. In fact, there is no one in the hero apartment who can consistently beat Captain Marvel. Except for Johnny, there is no one else. After all, when Captain Marvel bursts out with all his strength can approach or even reach the level of God. Ganada is still a little short of it, but with the blessing of the power of the Planet Devourer, she can also remain undefeated in the face of Captain Marvel. Aunt Marvel, is this all your strength? Killua taunted without hesitation. Not only in strength, but also in terms of swearing, Killua can also beat Captain Marvel by several streets. As soon as the word "Aunt" came out, Captain Marvel's face turned red. Of course, this was not shy, but angry. May Parker and others twitched at the corners of their mouths. My goodness, Killua's mouth is really tricky. Captain Marvel's appearance is indeed not very good, and her figure is also very ordinary. At first glance, she really feels a bit like an ant. Captain Marvel's small chest rose and fell wildly, and the power emanating from her body became more and more terrifying. Brothers, don't intervene. I'll play with him. Killua patted Johnny and others on the shoulders, then took a step forward and faced Captain Marvel head-on. Chapter 409 Switching Maps. Marvel's Fury Bang. Killua waved his hand, and the vigorous energy was directly sucked out by him. Boom. The energy beam exploded in midair. The violent energy shattered the glass of all the surrounding buildings. Large cracks also appeared on the walls. Seeing this, Killua frowned slightly. Fortunately, this place is remote and there are no residents. Otherwise, the shockwave just now would be enough to kill hundreds of people. Asshole. Captain Marvel didn't care at all at this time and rushed towards Killua again. The light flashed on his fist and went straight to Kinluo's throat. Seeing this, Kinluo didn't say anything more, and rushed forward and grabbed Captain Marvel's arm. The next second, the whole person disappeared in the street together with Captain Marvel. Kinluo, this guy, eats alone again. Tony looked at the direction where Kinluo disappeared, and curled his lips in dissatisfaction. By the way, should we save this street now? Spider-Man shifted his focus to the surrounding buildings. The power of Captain Marvel's attack just now continued to ferment, and all the surrounding buildings became precarious and could collapse at any time. Okay, stop complaining. Brother Kin has brought that amazing ant to hell. I guess she won't be able to come out in the future. Johnny regained his human form and said with a gloating look, "It's good that way, otherwise the whole street would be destroyed." Hearing Daredevil's words, Ganata showed a strange expression on his face and said, "You may have some misunderstanding about Kin's strength. If he really takes action, let alone a street, the destruction of the whole city is just a matter of turning his hand." Daredevil looked a little embarrassed and opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of the terrifying power when Kinluo first performed the Akilinita. "Everyone, get busy, otherwise this will be a problem after all." After saying this, May Parker performed the moon step and soared into the sky, placing the lightning rod that was about to fall back to its original position. Seeing this, the remaining few people also helped. Soon the damaged street was under preliminary control. Coupled with Tony's money ability, it would only take a few days to recover. Everyone thought they could watch a good show, but now they can only go back to the hero apartment and wait. Tony originally wanted Johnny to take them to hell, but after hearing that Johnny's spatial power was not particularly stable, he decisively gave up this idea. In hell, Old Carter and Ancient One both felt the arrival of Ancient One. As soon as they arrived, they saw Kinluo grabbing a woman's arm with one hand, with a mocking expression on his face. "Damn, where is this place? Where did you take me?" Captain Marvel felt the strangeness and dead power around him, and a trace of nervousness flashed in his eyes. "Welcome to hell as a guest. We can't show off in the human world, so let's play here," Kinluo said and threw Captain Marvel out. Captain Marvel flew back hundreds of meters before he could barely maintain his body shape. The contempt for Kinluo in his heart had disappeared without a trace at this time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. Thor's heart was bleeding when he saw this. The divine power in his Thor's hammer had been drained by Kinluo before. Recently, it was finally restored, but it was absorbed by Jane Fortes again. During this period, Thor's efforts were in vain. Just when Jane Fortes was about to master the power of Thor, suddenly, a red light flashed in his blue eyes, and this red light seemed to repel the power of Thor. The two forces collided with each other, and Jane Fortes' face instantly revealed a trace of pain. Kinluo frowned when he saw this, and almost forgot that Jane Fortes still had the reality gem in her body, which was a bit troublesome. His seal sealed the reality gem, but some of the scattered power could not be completely sealed. The current situation is obviously that the power of Thor has touched the power of the reality gem. Those scattered powers want to rush the power of Thor out of Jane Fortes' body. Although the power of Thor in Thor's hammer is not particularly much at this time, but compared with the power of those rootless reality gems, it is still much stronger. Seeing Jane Fortes' expression becoming more and more painful, before Thor could get anxious, Kinluo rushed to Jane Fortes' back in one step. He made a sword finger and directly tapped her back. In an instant, the surging wave power poured into Jane Fortes' body. At this time, Kinluo's wave power was basically about to complete the transformation of thunder and lightning breath. The thunder and lightning wave power can be said to be extremely similar to the power of Thor, but both in quality and quantity, it is several times greater than the power wall in Thor's hammer. With the blessing of Kinluo's thunder god's breath, The power of those reality gems had no room for resistance at all and was directly forced out of the body. The power of those red reality gems seemed to be affected by the power of Thor. It turned into a dark red lightning and rushed straight into the sky. Boom! With a loud bang, the whole sky was reflected in dark red. However, at this moment, everyone discovered something. The dark red lightning did not fall to the ground, but struck a glowing figure. Everyone watched this scene with their own eyes. The atmosphere around them suddenly became a little weird. "What is this?" "It hit a person," Tony said with his eyes wide open. Somewhat unbelievably, "Maybe it's a drone. How can a normal person fly in the sky?" Spider-Man asked tentatively. "It's clearly a humanoid," the Green Goblin suddenly said at this time. "Okay, stop guessing. It's indeed a person, and a nosy person. Let's go and take a look." "I didn't expect Jane to be able to strike this person with lightning." Kinlawo smiled and waved his hand, squinting his eyes at the direction where the figure just fell. With his perception, he could naturally detect the source of the power. Coupled with the unique light, it was not difficult to guess who the person was, and he also knew what her purpose was. Kinlawo waved his hand directly, and the huge sword was placed in front of everyone. Everyone's curiosity was raised at this time, so after seeing Kinlawo summon the flying sword, they all ran onto it without hesitation. Among them, Jane Fortes and Thor were the most active. The former was worried that he had hurt someone, and the latter was worried about Thor's hammer. Thor's hammer and Jane Fortes were equally important, but now he felt that he was abandoned. He was extremely entangled in his heart. Seeing everyone sitting down, Kinlawo's mind moved, and the flying sword soared into the air. It flew rapidly in the direction of the falling figure. At the same time, Nick Fury and SHIELD took in the scene that had just happened. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Sure enough, Kinlawo and the others were still prepared. Otherwise, Carol Danvers would not have been struck by lightning just when she approached. If Kinlawo was there, he really wanted to say that this was an accident, but ordinary people would not believe this level of coincidence. What's more, Nick Fury, who is known for his paranoia, but now Nick Fury has no power to help Captain Marvel. Of course, he will not help Captain Marvel even more. He was afraid that Captain Marvel would fail, and Kinlawo would vent his anger on him. He had seen Kinlawo's methods. Naturally, he didn't want to follow the footsteps of Hydra. Chapter 408. You are called Captain Marvel? Who am I? Where am I and what am I going to do? Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, who was covered in black and forced to get up from the ground, couldn't help but ask 3 questions in her mind, but she reacted quickly. The power around her body surged, and the feeling of being confused disappeared instantly. The dark marks on her body also dissipated a lot, but not completely. She was really stunned by the red lightning just now, and she suffered some injuries. The dark red lightning was condensed from the power emitted by the reality gem. There is also the power of Thor, and the blessing of Kinlawo's breath of Thor. Simply put, the reality gem is a bullet, and the 2 lightning forces are the kinetic energy of the firearm. With all these blessings, Captain Marvel was only slightly injured, which was quite good. If it were any other existence, it would probably have died directly. In fact, there is another reason. It is because of the power of the same gem. Part of Captain Marvel's power comes from the power of the space gem. Therefore, it has a considerable resistance to the power of the same reality gem. Damn it, who dares to sneak attack me? Is it the target this time? Captain Marvel muttered. His face became extremely ugly, and his eyes were full of coldness. However, at this moment, Captain Marvel found a giant sword flying down from the sky. On the giant sword stood more than a dozen people, both men and women, looking at her curiously. That look made Captain Marvel very uncomfortable, as if she was treated as an animal in a zoo. Captain Marvel was about to get angry, but she saw Kinlawo, the leader, instantly recognized that the man in front of him was the target of his trip. Are you Kinlawo? Captain Marvel looked at Kinlawo coldly, with a shining light emanating from his body. Everyone felt the hostility of Captain Marvel at this time. All the curious expressions changed. Their eyes became alert, their muscles tensed, and they looked like they were ready to fight. After going through so much, the people in the apartment had rich combat experience. Your name is Captain Marvel, right? Nick Fury asked you to come. Kinlawo floated down and looked at Captain Marvel in front of him with a slightly playful look and glanced at the sky. In an instant, Nick Fury in SHIELD was soaked in cold sweat, because he saw Kinlawo's murderous eyes, and he couldn't figure out why Kinlawo knew Captain Marvel, why he knew that Captain Marvel was related to him. Why did he seem to know everything? Nick Fury stood up with a gloomy face and walked outside. Chapter 90. The reason why he said that was nothing more than a simple provocation, but Captain Marvel just fell for it. Captain Marvel narrowed his eyes slightly, and a colorful light emanated from his body. The terrifying power even shattered the things in Nick Fury's office. Nick Fury, where is the person you are talking about? Tell me directly, and don't talk nonsense to me anymore, Captain Marvel said with a cold face and commanded. Oh okay, I will send you his location. Be careful. Nick Fury sighed and handed the special mobile phone to Captain Marvel. There was a precise map on the screen of the mobile phone. Obviously Nick Fury had prepared all this long ago. Captain Marvel took the phone, and a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, the technology on Earth is still so backward. Kinlawo and the others didn't know what happened to Nick Fury. Although Kinlawo could feel that there was an extra malice, but the malice towards him has appeared too frequently recently. It is no exaggeration to say that there are at least 800 people who have malice towards him in the whole city, so he didn't care much about one more or one less now. Kinlawo made a lot of delicious food. The quantity and quality were basically no worse than the new Mantuhan banquet made by the little chef trio. Faced with this unprecedented delicacy, the Thor brothers and Jane Fords, who had never eaten Kinlawo's cooking, all widened their eyes. They never thought that a ruthless person like Kinlawo could actually cook, and cook so well. Uncle Kin, your cooking skills are even better than the god of chefs. It's so delicious. I've never eaten such delicious food. Thor ate the food excitedly and said excitedly, and some food residues almost spit out. Fortunately, Kinlawo acted decisively, and a wave of force pushed back those messy things. At the same time, Kinlawo glared at him and said, swallow the food and talk again. Faced with Kinlawo's reprimand, Thor just smiled foolishly and didn't dare to refute at all. The arrogant god of hammer is now in front of Kinlawo, just like a junior, respectful. If the three Asgardian friends and the goddess of the earth Sif saw this scene, they would probably be shocked. Compared with Thor, Loki's movements were much more elegant. After looking at his brother with contempt, he said to Kinlawo, Uncle Kin, Thor is used to being rude. Please don't be surprised, but he is right. Your cooking skills have surpassed the god of chefs, and it is the first time for me to eat such delicious food. Okay, stop praising. You Asgard has too many gods, and our great Thor was knocked down by the electric shock device. Kinlawo waved his hand, then looked at Thor playfully and said. When these words came out, everyone was stunned, and then their shoulders all trembled involuntarily. It looked like he wanted to laugh but couldn't laugh out loud on the spot. Jane Fortes laughed without hesitation, patting Thor and saying, you scared Darcy and me at that time. My power of Thor was sealed. Thor blushed and hesitated, not knowing what to say. There's nothing to be ashamed of. But I really want to tell you something. You are Thor, not the god of hammers. You rely too much on this little guy. I think you might as well give the hammer to Jane Fortes. It will be good for you. Kinlawo patted Thor's shoulder and said meaningfully. Hearing this, before Thor was embarrassed, Jane Fortes said directly, Mr. Kinlawo, don't joke. I can't lift Mjolnir either. Don't worry. If you don't believe it, try it. You can lift it. Kinlawo said with a smile. Brother Kin, can we lift it? Johnny said with a little curiosity at this time. Well, just when Kinlawo was hesitating whether to use the same trick again and threaten Thor's hammer again, Maypark said quickly, Kin, don't be like before. The reason why Maypark said this was not because she was worried about Thor's hammer. After all, it was just a hammer. What she was worried about was the scene of the thunder and lightning waterfall after Kinlawo's Thor's hammer. If it appears here again, I'm afraid this party will be burned. Thor looked at Kinlawo with a strange look at this time. He didn't know what happened to Thor's hammer after losing it, but seeing Thor's hammer's fearful attitude towards Kinlawo, he knew that something he didn't know must have happened. But facing Kinlawo, he couldn't ask, am I that kind of person? I don't know about other people, but Jane Fortes will definitely be able to pick it up. Kinluo noticed Thor's eyes, laughed a little guilty and waved his hand, and then said with certainty. Seeing Kinluo's firm words, Jane Fortes couldn't help but be moved. However, she did not directly take Thor's hammer, but only looked at Thor with an inquiring look. Thor saw this, even though he was a little nervous and reluctant, but he still waved his hand and said in a dignified manner, Jane, Uncle Kin said so. Then you go and try it. It's okay. Jane Fortes nodded excitedly, stood up and walked to Thor's hammer. She rubbed her hands excitedly. Then she grabbed the handle of Thor's hammer. At this moment, Thor's eyes changed, and an unbelievable look appeared on his face. Because he could feel that the characteristics of Thor's hammer were not triggered, this means that it should not be a problem for Jane Fortes to pick up Thor's hammer. Chapter 407 The Power of Thor. Surprise and strike. Everyone looked at Jane Fortes nervously. After all, such a scene is still relatively novel to them. Loki did not pay too much attention. He was still eating the food on the table. In his opinion, Jane Fortes was just an ordinary human woman. Even Thor's hammer, which he could not lift, Jane Fortes could not lift it even more. The result is already determined, so why bother to see it? Of course, this is because Loki didn't see Thor's expression. If he saw Thor's expression, he would roughly understand what was going on with his understanding of Thor. Jane Fortes grabbed Thor's hammer. Her face turned red because of the effort. Jane Fortes's strength was not enough, and her body had not recovered completely. So soon her strength could not keep up. Just when she wanted to give up, Kinluo's voice suddenly rang in her ears. Don't give up in a hurry. Hold on. Jane Fortes was stunned for a moment when she heard the words. She put away the thought of giving up and gritted her teeth to hold on again. However, at this moment, a special magic symbol appeared on Thor's hammer, and then Jane Fortes felt her hand lighten. Thor's hammer was picked up by her like this. It was also at this moment that Jane Fortes felt a great force pouring into her body. That kind of power was unprecedented. The whole world seemed to resonate with her. Oh my God, she really picked it up. Could it be that Miss Jane is really the female Thor? Everyone couldn't help but exclaimed when they saw this. After all, they were generally aware of the characteristics of Thor's hammer, and knew that those who were not recognized would never be able to pick up the hammer. Of course, Kinluo, who is a cheater, was not one of them. After all, normal people would not think of threatening a hammer. Loki turned around after hearing everyone's exclamations, and saw Jane Fortes picking up the Thor's hammer that he had coveted for a long time. There is such a thing. Loki widened his eyes, and the food in his mouth almost choked him to death. He kept beating his chest to ease it for a while. Thor's hammer and Jane Fortes were both flashing with a faint blue light. And as time went by, the light became brighter and brighter. Chapter 91 Uncle Kin, is Jane okay? Seeing that Jane Fortes' condition was getting better and better, both her complexion and spirit had recovered quickly, Thor couldn't help but ask, Don't worry, my niece-in-law is fine. Of course, it's only for a short time. If you want to solve it completely, you still have to completely separate the Infinity Stones from her body. Kinluo clapped his hands, stood up and said. Hearing that Jane Fortes was fine for the time being, Thor breathed a sigh of relief. But he didn't let go completely. He also understood the power of the Infinity Stones and knew that it was not so easy for Jane Fortes to get rid of it completely. Uncle Kin, thank you. I will take Jane Fortes back to Asgard now, and the Queen Mother will definitely have a way to solve this problem. Thor bowed deeply to Kinluo, his eyes full of gratitude. Don't worry, take her back to the apartment first. Nothing will happen in the short term. As for taking her back to Asgard, we will go with you. Kinluo patted Thor's shoulder and stopped him from summoning the Rainbow Bridge. But, believe me, if you go back to Asgard now, your future will be full of pain. Before Thor finished speaking, Kinluo pinched his shoulders hard and said seriously. Thor saw Kinluo's rare serious expression. His heart couldn't help but tremble. If someone else said this to him, Thor would definitely not believe it, but the person who said it was Kinluo, a man who was several times stronger than his father. Thor was silent. Don't worry, with me here, there will be no problem with my niece-in-law, otherwise I will be in big trouble. Kinluo smiled and said with a relaxed look. Seeing Kinluo like this, Thor was completely determined to believe Kinluo and nodded vigorously. Thor picked up Jane Fortes horizontally. He followed Kinlawo out. As soon as the two went out, Loki's playful voice rang out, "It seems that someone doesn't want us to leave. Uncle Kin, what do you say we should do?" Kinlawo was stunned when he heard the words, and then he saw a group of fully armed security personnel. All of Jane Ford's colleagues and girlfriend squatted in the corner, trembling as they watched the scene in front of them. Obviously, these security guards were not the ones protecting this group of scholars. They were a group of outsiders. The security guards, who were originally aggressive, trembled all over after seeing Kinlawo, and a look of fear flashed in their eyes. "What do you mean? Where are you from?" Kinlawo looked at the security guards in front of him and asked with a smile. Although Kinlawo was smiling, but in the eyes of those security guards, it was no different from the smile of a devil. "Hello, Mr. Kinlawo. We are from S.H.I.E.L.D. A leading man in a suit walked out of the security guards and said respectfully, "People from S.H.I.E.L.D., it's okay here, you can leave." Kinlawo heard that it was people from S.H.I.E.L.D., and his original smiling face was slightly cold, and he waved his hand. "Mr. Kinlawo, this matter, get out." The man in the suit was obviously unwilling to leave like this, and wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Kinlawo's shout. Then the security guards and the men in suits felt the terrifying atmosphere. Plop! The men's legs softened and they fell down directly. The laboratory was filled with an unacceptable smell. "Retreat!" The man in suit gritted his teeth and said with fear. Then these people immediately stood up and walked out of the laboratory without any hesitation, supporting each other. "Let's go," Kinlawo said, grabbed Thor and Loki, and disappeared from the spot in a flash. Only the scholars who were terrified and surprised were left. After Kinlawo and others returned to the apartment, they were still busy cleaning up. Seeing this, everyone immediately surrounded them, especially Wanda. She looked at the still weak Jane Fortes at this time, and she had an inexplicable feeling in her heart. It felt like seeing a fellow. Jane Fortes also had this feeling at this time, looking at Wanda in a daze. "What's going on?" Tony looked at Thor and Jane Fortes in his arms curiously. Anyone who is not a fool can see the relationship between the two. This, Thor laughed bitterly, and for a moment he didn't know where to start. His mind was in a mess. Loki stood up at this time and told everyone what happened vividly. Among the people who know the current affairs of Marvel, there must be Loki. Loki now understands that he can't leave Kinlawo's thigh, and he doesn't want to leave now. After all, there is a purple potato spirit weighing on his heart. Instead of following with a reluctant look, it is better to integrate into it. Everyone was a little surprised by Loki's transformation, but they didn't resist. Soon the atmosphere became harmonious. Jane Fortes recovered quickly with the blessing of blood and energy. After a while, she broke away from Thor's arms and talked and laughed with everyone. Girlfriend group member +1 Kinlawo looked at everything in front of him, and felt an indescribable comfort in his heart. There was a feeling that this was all the kingdom I conquered. Then Kinlawo picked up the youngling knife and started cutting the ingredients frantically. An SHIELD. Nick Fury looked at his subordinates who had returned in a panic. Ink was dripping from his dark face. "You mean, you gave up the mission after you met Kinlawo?" Nick Fury looked at the man in the suit and said in a gloomy tone, "This matter is actually okay. Don't explain, you guys go down." Without giving the man in the suit a chance to explain, Nick Fury waved his hand impatiently. The man in the suit and others left Nick Fury's new office as if they had been pardoned. Nick Fury looked at the backs of several people, and a burst of murderous intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. In his opinion, there was no need to stay for such a waste. "Nick Fury, it seems that you are having a hard time." Just as Nick Fury was suppressing his anger, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind him, and he even wanted to hear it in his dreams. "You are here." Nick Fury's gloomy face softened instantly. Chapter 406 Apartment Party. Female Thor, what's the matter? Tell me quickly. I'm very busy now, and there are some troubles in the universe that have not been resolved. Captain Marvel said coldly. His expression had a feeling of indifference to everything. It is normal for Big Mom Marvel to behave like this. With her current strength, everything on Earth is just a fight between ants. If it weren't for Nick Fury, she probably wouldn't have come to a weak planet like Earth. It is indeed a big trouble. I'm afraid you are not his opponent. I don't know if it is right to ask you to come back, Nick Fury said with a complicated look on his face. In fact, with Nick Fury's understanding of Captain Marvel, how could he not know the other party's arrogance? Chapter 92. If he had tied up this human woman, would his plan have succeeded? Stop making trouble. Calm down first. I'm here. Nothing will happen even if the sky falls. Kinlawo rolled his eyes at Thor, bent down, and checked Jane Fortes's condition at the moment. Jane Fortes's condition at the moment was really not good. The vitality and various functions in her body were almost consumed by the impact of the reality gem. Although the reality gem is repairing her body, but it is only repairing her body. The vitality will not be replenished. If nothing unexpected happens, Jane Fortes may not have much time left even if her body can recover. Chapter 404. Rescue and seal the gem. In the original plot, Jane Fortes seemed to have been diagnosed with cancer in a few years. He almost died. Later, it was found that Thor's hammer contained powerful power, which might be able to heal his body. So he found the broken Thor's hammer. Although Thor's hammer was already destroyed at that time, due to the oath Thor had made, Thor's hammer was revived with full blood and gave Jane Fortes powerful divine power. It made her become the female Thor in one fell swoop. However, the power of Thor only gave Jane Fortes a strong power and a strong physique. It helped her solve the problem in a short period of time, but the power of Thor could not make up for her lost vitality. As a result, after the last battle, Jane Fortes died in Thor's arms. As for the fact that the soul of the female Thor went to the Hall of Souls later, that was a problem of the soul. So back to the story. Jane Fortes' problem now is that her body is damaged and is being restored by the reality gem, but her vitality cannot be replenished. The price of the reality gem to help her restore her body is also the little vitality left. In fact, if Odin could really help Jane Fortes in the original plot, she would not have reached that point. It's a pity that in Odin's eyes, Jane Fortes' life is not important. Brother Kin, I am not dying. Jane Fortes looked at Kinlawo weakly and spoke intermittently. The severe pain from her body made it impossible for her to say a complete sentence. Jane Fortes knew Kinlawo, and the two had met several times, but they had said very little, or basically they had never spoken. Ding. Detected important plot characters. Jane Fortes, future female Thor, obtained special buff, accelerated draw cooling. The next draw fishing rod time is halved. Kinlawo's eyes lit up slightly. He didn't expect that Jane Fortes would bring him a buff. Originally, he had just drawn the fishing rod not long ago, and it would take 3 or 4 days before the next draw, but the current buff took effect immediately. Tomorrow he will have another chance to draw. Don't forget, there is also Wanda's buff bonus. Kinlawo was very much looking forward to the next draw, but from the bottom of his heart, Kinlawo still hopes to draw the accelerated buff. After all, the mythical fishing rod is still soaking in the lake that represents the heavens and the worlds. It's not a big deal, it's just a gem, bear with it, niece. Kinlawo, who got the new buff, was obviously in a good mood, and pressed his sword finger on the center of Jane Fortes' eyebrows. In an instant, Thor's heart was lifted, and he was very nervous. He was really afraid that Kinlawo would not be able to save Jane Fortes. After all, if Kinlawo couldn't do it, there would be no one in the world who could solve it. The man in front of him was the one who defeated the gods. Kinlawo mobilized the blood and chi to flow into Jane Fortes' body. The majestic blood and chi power continued to nourish her body full of holes and the loss of life force. With the nourishment of the blood and chi power, Jane Fortes' face became visibly ruddy, and the severe pain in her body was rapidly reduced. This feeling even gave her a dreamlike illusion, as if the pain just now was just a dream. However, just as her body gradually recovered, a red breath different from the blood power emanated from her body. It was the power of the reality stone. Obviously, the reality stone reacted strongly to this unfamiliar blood power, and it was not very friendly. The two breaths collided, and Jane Fortes felt the heart-wrenching pain again, making her scream out, "Jane, damn, what are you doing?" Darcy couldn't sit still after hearing Jane Fortes' screams, and rushed over with the classic electric shotgun. The other scholars also rushed over with gritted teeth. Loki, who was at the back, sneered and flashed in front of those people. "Human, don't make trouble here. Otherwise I don't mind sending gods to you." Loki didn't wait to say anything, and the electric shotgun hit him directly. This level of click naturally couldn't hurt Loki, but the strong sense of paralysis still made him look very ugly. "Asshole, you humans are looking for death." Loki's face was fierce. What he hated most now was being electrocuted. As the clone magic was turned on, countless clones almost filled the entire laboratory in an instant. Of course, Kinlawo was not affected at all. Darcy and those scholars were shocked when they saw this scene, and they couldn't help but feel fear for Loki in front of them. Seeing the fearful eyes of the crowd, Loki felt refreshed immediately, and he still liked this kind of eyes very much. Only in this way can he feel the majesty of God. But he didn't intend to let these humans go, except Thor. No one can electrocute him, no one. Just when Loki was about to draw out the dagger to solve these humans, Kinlawo's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Are you going to kill people? These are all your sister-in-law's friends. Are you sure you want to do it?" Kinlawo's words calmed Loki's murderous heart. Of course, this calmness was not brought to him by Jane Fords and Thor. He didn't care about Thor's love and his human sister-in-law, but he didn't dare to be presumptuous in response to Kinlawo's words. He didn't have the courage to kill anyone in front of Kinlawo again. "Uncle Kin, you misunderstood. I just want to teach these people a lesson." Loki smiled flatteringly and then put away the dagger. However, Kinlawo didn't care about him anymore, but concentrated on solving the reality gem in Jane Ford's body. He used the power of blood and chi to protect Jane Ford's body, and then used the power of fluctuations to protect her soul. When taking refuge for a while to clean up the reality gem, Jane Ford's body and soul were destroyed because they could not withstand the impact. After making sure that Jane Ford's was protected without leaks, Kinlawo mobilized the sword energy in his body and went straight to the reality gem hidden in Jane Ford's body. Under the collision of the two energies, the entire laboratory trembled. The terrifying pressure made everyone present kneel to the ground involuntarily. "Demon Seal!" Kinlawo shouted in a low voice, and the terrifying sword energy quickly transformed into a Taikai diagram, surrounding the reality gem in Jane Ford's body. The reality gem wanted to rush out, but it was completely dissolved by the Taikai diagram. In the end, it was firmly sealed in Jane Ford's body. Chapter 405 Brought back to the apartment. Surprise arrived. The Taikai diagram on Jane Ford's body can be regarded as the highest level of Shushan sealing technique. When the 5 old men of King Y reinforced the seal of the demon locking tower, they used this kind of sealing technique. It can stabilize the power of the demon locking tower. Controlling the reality gem is naturally a piece of cake. Perhaps as time goes by, the reality gem can break through its seal, but don't even think about it in a short time. Infinity gems are really not easy to deal with. I didn't expect that there would be a day when this sealing technique would be used. Kinlawo let out a long breath and muttered to himself. Chapter 93 In the valley in the north, Thor was carrying Loki and rushing forward. From time to time, he took advantage of the power of Thor to take a short flight. He rushed in one direction at a very fast speed. Through the mark left on Jane Fortes, he felt that Jane Fortes was in a bad situation at this time. Thor's hammer also established some connections with Jane Fortes because of Thor's promise. Now he also sensed the situation of his mistress, so he also put all his strength and hurried towards Jane Fortes. At this time, one person and one hammer were extremely anxious. Thor opened the rainbow bridge and teleported over. Unfortunately, when he went to the earth, Odin had already closed the rainbow bridge. If he wanted to reopen it, he had to get Odin's approval. So now he could only run and fly, and Loki on his shoulder had a look of despair. Now he was going crazy, because Thor was rushing on the road continuously, so the power of Thor was released without money. This also led to Loki being electrotherapy from time to time. It can be said that in just this short time, Loki was electrocuted more times than he had in the past year. Damn Thor, what are you going to do? If you have something to do, put me down. Hiss. Hey, you're going too far. Hiss. Good brother, let me go. I promise not to run away. Is that okay? Crackling. However, just when Thor wanted to start flying with the hammer again, suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. Thor's hammer was so scared when it saw this person that it smashed towards the ground. Thor and Loki didn't react and both fell hard to the ground. That was so embarrassing. Chapter 403 Gem Possession. Concern makes you confused in a laboratory somewhere. Jane Fortes slowly opened her eyes. Jane Fortes wanted to get up, but she felt a sharp pain all over her body and couldn't move at all. You know, what just entered her body was not the power of Thor. It was the reality gem, one of the 6 infinity gems. The power of the reality stone is not given for nothing. Even an ordinary Godfather-level person may not be able to digest the power of an infinity stone. Not to mention Jane Fortes, an ordinary person. She was able to survive, partly because of luck. Of course, it also has something to do with Thor, but it is not a big deal. More importantly, the reality stone does not want Jane Fortes to die. For various reasons, she was able to survive. Otherwise, ordinary humans would die if faced with the impact of the infinity stones. What happened to me? Jane Fortes carefully recalled everything that had just happened. She only remembered that a red light appeared. Then she felt something entering her body. Jane Fortes wanted to check her physical condition. As a result, as soon as she moved, she felt a burst of severe pain in her body again, which made her gasp and dare not move at all. I'm not going to die, am I? Damn it, it's all because of that bastard Thor. Jane Fortes bit her back teeth, and tears slowly flowed from her eyes. Just as her eyes were tearful, she vaguely saw the figure that cursed. Time went back to a few minutes ago. Kinlaw looked at the two brothers stacked on the ground, and the corners of his eyes couldn't help twitching. He said earnestly, "What kind of ghost thing are you playing? Brothers, don't do this." Facing Kinlaw's words and strange eyes, Loki's face flushed red, and he wanted to say something, even swearing, but after seeing Kinlaw's face, all the words were held back. And Thor couldn't care about any messy things now. But when he saw Kinlaw in front of him, his eyes lit up. He knew that Kinlaw's attainments in space power were quite strong, and it would definitely not be difficult for him to find Jane Fortes. Uncle Kin, help me, something happened to Jane, I can feel it, I want to save her now. Thor jumped up, grabbed Kinlaw's arm, and said anxiously and pleadingly, Jane is in trouble? The time is a little early, it should be related to the power in Tony's soul. This is quite interesting. Kinlaw touched his chin with his other hand, looking a little surprised. Okay, you are panicking, she is not dead yet. Even if she is dead, I can pull her back. Let's go. Kinlaw really couldn't stand Thor's little look. He shook off his arm, and then grabbed him and Loki in his hands at the same time, and disappeared from the spot in a flash. The three appeared again, and appeared in the laboratory where Jane Fortes was. Jane Fortes is not the only one studying here. The sudden appearance of Kinlaw and others naturally attracted the attention of scholars. Several people wanted to stop them, but facing Thor, who was almost emotionally collapsed, these ordinary people couldn't stand it, and they were thrown out by Thor like rag bags. Fortunately, Jane Fortes's best friend recognized Thor, the girl Darcy who defeated Thor with thunder and lightning at that time. Thor, why are you here? Jane is doing important research. Don't disturb her. Darcy had seen Thor's ability, so she knew why he came here, so she quickly stopped him. But she was very smart not to stop Thor. After all, the colleagues before were all lessons learned. Jane is in danger now. After leaving this sentence, Thor smashed the door of the laboratory with the hammer and rushed out. Kinlaw and Loki followed behind him. Darcy and other scholars also wanted to come and see, but they were afraid. As a result, they saw Jane Fortes lying on the ground cursing Thor. To be honest, Kinlaw couldn't help but feel embarrassed for Thor when he saw this scene, and Thor now has nothing else in his eyes except Jane Fortes. As for those who cursed him, he naturally couldn't listen. Jane, I'm sorry, Thor murmured, his eyes red, and hugged Jane Fortes. Hiss! The sound of sucking cold air came from Jane Fortes' mouth. Now she felt so painful that she was dying when she moved, not to mention being held in such a rough embrace. Jane Fortes wished she could faint, but unfortunately her spirit was better than ever. Let go me. Jane Fortes' weak voice came out of her mouth, and she almost used all her strength to say these words. No, I won't let you go again. Now I live on Earth, and I can live on Earth in the future. We won't be separated again, Thor said excitedly, holding his arms tighter. Well, let me say something. I advise you to let her go. If you continue like this, you might ask Johnny for her, Kinlawo said helplessly at this time. Hearing this, Thor couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He didn't react a little. What's the relationship between Jane Fords and Johnny? Could it be Lau Kaiang next door? Fortunately, Thor's mind was not so slow that it was exaggerated. He soon reacted. Johnny seemed to be the master of hell now. After thinking it through, Thor quickly let go of his hand and looked at Jane Fords, and found that Jane Fords had rolled his eyes at this time. It is estimated that he is not far from foaming at the mouth. Jane, damn it. Uncle Kin, what happened to her? Is she okay? She won't be in danger of death. As the saying goes, worrying makes you confused. Thor was completely at a loss at this time, and looked at Kinlawo for help. Seeing Thor in such a state, Loki's eyes flashed with contempt, and at the same time, he couldn't help but think about it. Chapter 94. It can be said that in a short period of time, the Hydra bug is completely dead, and it is estimated that it will never have the courage to trouble Kinlawo again. After all, the record is there. In half a day, hundreds of Hydra bases were destroyed. No one dares to say how terrifying Kinlawo and others will be in 10 years. The news of the destruction of Hydra has almost spread all over the world. There is no way Kinlawo and his actions this time are too high profile. Those who are interested can find clues as long as they investigate a little. Although Hydra is an organization that has been destroyed in the eyes of many people, but there are also many people who know that Hydra is just hiding, and their terrifying power has always been there. As a result, more than a dozen people in an apartment solved all the Hydra bases in half a day, and there are almost no survivors left. Several major organizations in the world got this news. They were all scared to death. In their opinion, even the hidden power of Hydra is more powerful than them. And now, but they were easily eliminated by Kinlawo and others. Doesn't that mean that it would be an easy and pleasant process for Kinlawo and his group to eliminate themselves? Maybe it won't take half a day to wipe them all out. The hand. Mrs. Jiao looked at the other fingers in front of her and said in a deep voice, "Notify everyone that anyone who meets someone from the hero apartment must be courteous and no one is allowed to interfere in anything in the hero apartment. Our people must not appear where the people in the hero apartment are, even if the mission fails." Everyone had different expressions when they heard this. Some thought that Mrs. Jiao was right. Others thought that Mrs. Jiao was a little too exaggerated and it was unnecessary. The 9-Spider Bride was one of them. She looked at Mrs. Jiao and said, "Madam, is this too much? Our people are quite arrogant, and it may be difficult for us to accept such an order. If you can't accept it, otherwise, die." Mrs. Jiao looked at the 9-Spider Bride with a cold look in her eyes. The latter suddenly felt a tingling sensation on her scalp, and finally lowered her head. "Yes, I know." The Ten Commandments gang. At this time, the gang leader Wenwu was giving the same instructions as Madame Jiao, and he tore up all the original plans against Kinlawo and others. Wenwu was not a fool. He could see that Kinlawo was no longer the same as before. Looking at the information that gradually turned into ashes, Wenwu sat in the office chair, and his heart was even more frightened. Fortunately, they have always been cautious and did not act rashly, otherwise, it might be their 10 Commandments gang that was destroyed today. "Bring that kid back to me immediately. Don't let him wander around outside. If he resists, bring him back by force. I can't accept broken arms and legs," Wenwu said in a deep voice to the people who knelt in front of him. The senior members of the 10 Commandments gang did not say much nonsense after hearing this, and immediately set out to find Wenwu's son. At this time, Wenwu was sitting in the boss chair, playing with the 10 rings that gave him powerful power. His eyes flickered and there was a faint flash of strange light. He felt that he might find an opportunity to visit this powerful fellow. Chapter 402. Everyone returns. Problematic brothers. There are not many powerful organizations like the Hand and the 10 Commandments on the entire earth, but there are definitely more than double digits. However, the reactions of these organizations at this time are almost the same. They chose not to provoke Kinlawo and others very wisely, but Kinlawo didn't know these. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care too much. Now there are almost no forces on the earth that he can look up to. In addition to Kamartage, there is the Wakanda tribe of Black Panther. Kinlawo thought that if he had a chance, he would find Black Panther and refresh his buff again. Since getting Quicksilver's extreme speed buff, Kinlawo can feel that his mythical fishing progress has increased a lot, but it may take a lot of time to fish it out, so he needs more acceleration buff or other buffs to speed up the mythical fishing. After Tony followed Kinlawo back to the apartment, he came to his senses a little bit. It seems that he was fooled by Kinlawo. Not only that, he also found a reason for the other party. For a moment, Tony couldn't help but secretly hate this damned scumbag. It's really unreliable. But even though he cursed in his heart, Tony didn't intend to get to the bottom of it. He even said that he wanted to erase this matter from his mind. Tony felt that Kinlawo would definitely not harm him, otherwise, he wouldn't be alive now. Since Kinlawo didn't want to tell him, Kinlawo had his reasons. Maybe it was because of his own lack of strength. He knew Kinlawo and knew that it was difficult to change Kinlawo's decision. So it's better to let it go than to dwell on this matter. Anyway, sooner or later, Kinlawo will tell him. Kinlawo, who returned to the apartment, felt a chill behind him before he sat down, followed by a faint malice. He turned around and found that Tony was looking at him with a slightly complicated look. Kinlawo seemed to understand something at this time, smiled awkwardly at Tony, and then sat down on the sofa. "How are you all? How did you handle it?" Kinlawo sat down and looked at everyone and spoke. At this time, most of the people in the apartment had returned. But basically, they had just returned, except for some scratches on the Green Goblin. Most of the others returned intact. There was no way. The current lineup of the hero apartment was really a bit arrogant, relying on the power of those Hydra bases. It was basically a pipe dream to want to compete, except for the Green Goblin and his son, Daredevil, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. trio. The remaining people, even if they were alone, would not be too difficult to destroy Hydra as long as they were given some time. The captain and others haven't come back yet. It is absolutely impossible that something happened to them, otherwise Red Queen would notify him as soon as possible. The reason why he didn't come back is also reasonable. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. covers a wide range, and the people of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. are basically in a state of being mixed together. So it is quite troublesome to deal with, unless they cut the Gordian knot. Otherwise, if they want to deal with this matter, they have to wait until night. "Brother Kin, Thor hasn't come back yet. Did something happen?" Johnny spoke at this time. Kinlawo then noticed that the place belonging to Thor and the others was empty, and there was no one there. Seeing this scene, Kinlawo couldn't help but frown. Logically speaking, they had been delayed for so long with Dr. Zora. Thor and the others should have come back. Although the Hydra in the north is slightly stronger, its strength is limited. With Thor's lightning power, and Loki's magic and cunning, it is not difficult to deal with them. Could there be any accident? "Red Queen, can you contact Thor now?" Kinlawo took out his mobile phone and spoke directly. Red Queen appeared on the screen of Kinlawo's mobile phone and replied, "Master, Thor and the others have disconnected from me, and the mobile phone seems to have been broken. I don't know their whereabouts at the moment. Other channels, including the stars, cannot find their location." "Okay, I know." "Everyone, prepare for the evening banquet. I'll go and see what's going on with the two brothers. I'll be back soon." Kinlawo waved to everyone and disappeared from the spot. Everyone saw this and didn't worry about anything. After all, Kinlawo's strength was there, and he wouldn't get into trouble no matter who got into trouble. So everyone started to get busy. Some packed up the food, some prepared the drinks, and some caught the thieves. Ganata. Soon, the hero apartment became bustling with activity. Chapter 95. That was his beloved. Even if he was not his biological child, he was better than his biological child. How could he not be sad? But for his dream, Thanos felt that everything was worth it. Even if he had to sacrifice himself, it was not impossible at some point. He had a huge golden glove on his hand. It was the Infinity Glove that could activate the power of the Infinity Gems. At this time, there was already a purple gem on the glove. It was the power gem among the 6 Infinity Gems. Now he had 2 big gems in his hand, and the Reality Gem was about to appear. At that time, If he could master the power of 3 gems, then even if he was a father-level existence, he would still not take it seriously, even if it was a god. He had the ability to fight. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but touch his chest, and the sword marks on it were still clearly visible. Suddenly, the 2 infinity gems became restless. Thanos was immediately frightened. The power gem was okay, but he paid a heavy price for the soul gem. He would never let these 2 gems slip away from his hands. Thanos tried his best to control the restlessness of the 2 gems, even at the cost of mobilizing the Titan power in his body. Fortunately, the gem's restlessness lasted for a limited time. After persisting for a while, it finally stopped. Like Ancient One, Thanos also felt the source of the gem's restlessness. Gritting his teeth, Thanos felt that there was no time to lose and he had to rush to Earth immediately. Otherwise, if the gem had any accidents, his years of hard work would be in vain. His daughter also died in vain. Ebony Maw, order all the Chitauri and the Obsidian 5 to move forward at full speed. Reach Earth in the shortest time, Thanos roared. The sound instantly spread throughout the entire space battleship. After receiving the order, Ebony Maw immediately arranged the manpower obediently. In the universe, Thanos' fleet almost turned into streams of light at the same time and rushed towards the Earth. Somewhere on the Earth, Jane Fortes was studying some kind of energy fluctuation. The sudden violent energy fluctuation caused all the instruments in the entire studio to blow up. At the same time, Jane Fortes felt a flash of red light. The next moment, he completely lost consciousness. In a forbidden area in the 9 realms, the chief of the Dark Elves opened his eyes. He stood up suddenly and looked towards the Earth. His eyes were full of fanaticism. Speaking of Kinluo, compared with the restless gems of Thanos and Ancient One, the mind gem in Kinluo's inventory is much more stable. There is no way. Who makes him a man with cheats? At this time, the light around Tony gradually dissipated on the screen, and the figure of Dr. Zora had completely disappeared. In fact, when Tony roared and the light shone, Dr. Zora's body had been completely destroyed by this light. Dr. Zora, a generation of bosses of Hydra, who attempted to be immortal, completely disappeared in front of Tony. No longer exists in this universe. Tony looked at the empty scene in front of him. The whole person slowly came back to his senses. He just felt that his mind was very confused. Of course, he still remembered what happened. It's just that he has recovered his thinking ability now. He even felt that his thoughts have become clearer than ever before. Some of the previous problems were surprisingly all figured out at this moment. Kinluo, did you leave some kind of power in my soul? Tony turned around and looked at Kinluo through the screen and asked. Chapter 401, Tricking Tony. Don't provoke. Hero Apartment looked at Tony's unfriendly eyes. Kinluo raised his hands innocently. Hey, I swear to God, I didn't help you. The power just now surprised even me. If you don't believe it, you can ask Wanda. She also felt some kind of power in your soul. Hearing Kinluo's words, Tony turned his head half-believingly and looked at Wanda. Wanda didn't say anything, but nodded slightly, indicating her agreement with Kinluo's statement. Kinluo, what exactly is in my soul? Can you feel it? Tony just breathed a sigh of relief, and then his heart was lifted again. Anyone who knows that there is some abnormal energy in his soul will probably feel nervous. I can probably guess a little, but I'm not sure. I can only tell you that it has something to do with the power of the Infinity Stones. Kinluo touched his chin and spoke with a thoughtful look. In fact, Kinluo had guessed it almost exactly. But he didn't intend to tell Tony. After all, the existence of the Wisdom Stone, in some ways, has many problems. With Tony's character, if he knew that he had the special power of the Infinity Stones in his body, I'm afraid he would study it without thinking of the consequences. By that time, it might cause a lot of trouble. The power of the Infinity Stones? Could it be that the power of the Infinity Stones that Loki tried to control me in the past? That ugly scepter? Tony asked tentatively after a little thought. Well, what you said is very likely. The power of the Mind Stone is quite different, and its effect on the soul is almost second only to the Soul Stone. Maybe that time, the power of the gems remained in your soul. Kinluo clapped his hands and said solemnly. He laughed secretly in his heart. He was just thinking of a reason, but Tony made it up himself. Sure enough, Invisible brain supplements are the most deadly. But that's not right. Didn't you leave some kind of protective power on me? And he failed to control me. Tony's face was still full of doubts, and he said in denial, "Brother, can you stop thinking so much?" At that time, I didn't completely expel the power of the gem. I later absorbed the power of hell and became a god-level power. At that time, I was lucky enough to prevent you from being controlled temporarily, so it's not impossible for the residual power of the mind gem to remain in your soul. Kinlawo patted Tony's shoulders twice and decisively interrupted his train of thought. Otherwise, with this kid's intelligence, he might come up with some weird things. It's not impossible to find the real answer. Hearing Kinlawo's words, Tony couldn't help rolling his eyes. Nonsense. It's not you who has a problem with your soul. Of course you won't think so much. Forget it. Let's go back quickly, as long as you can make sure that I'm okay. Don't worry. I can guarantee that you don't have any problems now. Let's go. After Kinlawo finished speaking, he led everyone out of the mountain. At the moment they left, boom, the wave force exploded instantly, and there was a loud bang, and a monster-like shadow flashed by. Then the entire mountain was flattened, and Dr. Zora said that everything that remained also disappeared. After this battle, most of the Hydra's power has been completely destroyed. There may be a small undercurrent of power, but if you want to reach the current level, don't even think about it for 10 or 8 years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. That was a real beating. Kinlawo was not exaggerating at all. It was even more brutal than Jarvis's treatment of those self-destructing robots. On the screen, Tony's armor had several more locks, locking Dr. Zora's robot in midair. His palm was facing the robot, constantly firing palm cannons. That frequency, how should I say, the prince's tactics were just like that. Under the bombardment of the palm cannon, Dr. Zora's robot collapsed very quickly. However, Dr. Zora also tried his best to face the scene. After all, this robot was his last strength. If the robot completely collapsed, with the remaining soul power in his body, he could not condense such a robot again. So Dr. Zora tried his best, and every time the robot was about to collapse, he used the soul power to restore the robot, and took this opportunity to attack Tony. But his little attack didn't even hurt Tony's hair. It just manifested a few pitiful marks. Tony, however, was like a ruthless robot, tearing up Dr. Zora's body bit by bit. The power of a human soul is limited, not to mention the soul power of Dr. Zora in his current state. Tony's palm just now almost killed him, and now he has consumed so much soul power. Dr. Zora only felt a trance, and the feeling that his soul was about to dissipate surged into his heart again. He knew that he couldn't go on like this. Otherwise, his soul would completely collapse. Just looking at Tony under the super mark suit, Dr. Zora felt a strong sense of powerlessness, envy, jealousy and hatred in his heart. After all, his soul has been integrated with this machine for such a long time. Naturally, he has done some research on the power of the soul. He can see that Tony's soul is pure and powerful. Compared with him, it is many times stronger. Not to mention himself, who is lingering on now. Even in his prime, he definitely does not have the ability to fight Tony. Maybe the situation will only be a little better than it is now. Suddenly, Dr. Zora had a special idea in his mind. If his soul merged with the other party, he could take the pure soul power with his strong will. In this way, he might be able to achieve eternity. Dr. Zora's weak eyes were gradually replaced by fiery ones. He stared at Tony in the super mark suit. He tried his best. He poured the remaining soul power into the robot. Boom. The robot exploded instantly, and the surging soul power hit the super mark suit. Since a hole was torn on the suit, Dr. Zora took the opportunity to get in directly, and rushed to Tony quickly. At this time, Tony, before he could react, saw Dr. Zora's face that was so illusory that he was about to be unclear. Die, die, your body is mine. Dr. Zora roared and grabbed Tony's body with both hands, trying to merge himself with it. Now Dr. Zora's soul power has been exhausted, so it has not dissipated. Just relying on his last obsession, Tony still didn't understand the soul very well, so when Dr. Zora caught him, he didn't know what to do for a moment. However, at this moment, a ray of light emanated from Tony's body. It was extremely dazzling. Chapter 401, Revenge. Gemstones in agitation. Dr. Zora didn't know what the light represented at all. He just stared at Tony, and his obsession in his heart was just to occupy Tony's body. At this time, the light shone on Dr. Zora's body that was almost about to dissipate. In an instant, it was like light dispelling darkness. The place where Dr. Zora was illuminated was annihilated. It was no exaggeration to say that it was shattered inch by inch. Unimaginable pain was transmitted into Dr. Zora's will. The long-lost pain made him scream involuntarily. Tony still didn't understand what happened, but Dr. Zora's extremely painful expression and the shrill scream, but it made Tony feel the pleasure of revenge. "Go to hell, go to hell," Tony yelled, and the light around him seemed to sense his emotions and became more dazzling. Even Kinlawo and others outside couldn't see what was happening inside, but Kinlawo felt a familiar breath at this time. That was the unique breath of the Infinity Stone. Sure enough, Tony's soul was hosting the power of an Infinity Stone. To be precise, it might not be the power of a complete soul gem, because Kinlawo felt the incomplete feeling in that power. It seemed that this power was incomplete. At the same time, in hell, Ancient One, who was constantly building hell, suddenly shook all over. The time gem on his chest and the space gem at the center of his eyebrows all shone with bursts of light. It seemed that he had sensed something. The reaction was extremely intense. Ancient One thought to himself that it was not good. If the power of these two gems burst out, with her current body, she might not be able to withstand it, so she quickly used the cosmic energy of the Devourer of Planets. Hundreds of magic arrays were drawn in her hands, constantly suppressing the restlessness of the two gems. Fortunately, the power of cosmic energy is very strong, coupled with the ingenuity of the Ancient One's magic array. With the combination of the two, the Ancient One was able to barely suppress the restlessness of the two gems. After about a few minutes, the restlessness of the gems gradually subsided. The Ancient One stopped suppressing the power and couldn't help wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. With the power of the two gems just now, maybe if she was not careful, she could destroy hell. Naturally, she couldn't escape death. The current Ancient One is not the same as before. She doesn't want to die so easily now. The influence of the eternal necessity on her has been completely lifted in the last incident. After recovering from her shock, the Ancient One couldn't help but raise her head, look towards the direction of the earth. She can feel that the source of the restlessness of the gems is on the earth. What on earth is Kinlawo doing again? Alas, I shouldn't have gone to have tea with him in the first place, Master Ancient One grumbled with a hint of complaint. Then she crossed her legs and began to regulate her breathing. Now that the construction of hell has reached a new stage, she doesn't have much time to rest. In the starry sky, Thanos played with the soul stone in his hand. He was secretly sad. For this infinity stone, he sacrificed his daughter. Chapter 97. If Kinlawo's wave force was not strong, he might not have been able to move Tony. Tony turned into a dazzling white light and merged into the robot. Soon Tony's figure appeared on the green screen. Jarvis wanted to fight alongside Tony, but was called away by Tony. In desperation, Jarvis could only get out of the robot's body. With the help of Kinlawo, he helped Tony control the battlesuit and the body inside the battlesuit. "Boy, you are really brave. I didn't expect you to use your soul to enter my world." Dr. Zora looked at Tony, who was in the same state as himself, with bursts of light flashing in his eyes, and he could still see greedy eyes faintly. Since integrating his soul into this machine, although he has gained many incredible abilities, he is no longer worried about the decay of his body. But Dr. Zora soon realized the problem, that is, his soul was getting weaker and weaker. Even if the weakness was not very large, it was still noticed by Dr. Zora. He thought of many ways, but there was no way to stop his soul from weakening. This matter has almost become a headache for Dr. Zora. But now, after Tony's soul came to this world, Dr. Zora suddenly realized something. Perhaps he could devour Tony's soul to strengthen himself. This idea appeared very abruptly, but it convinced Dr. Zora very much. He believed that if he could devour Tony, he would definitely be able to obtain unparalleled benefits. Thinking of this, Dr. Zora couldn't wait to attack Tony. Still like attacking Jarvis, Dr. Zora split into thousands of clones and flew towards Tony. Trying to control Tony, he didn't want to destroy Tony's soul, otherwise he would have nothing to eat. Tony looked at Dr. Zora's clones, and his expression seemed to be a little confused. To be precise, Tony was really confused. He felt that these clones of Dr. Zora seemed very weak. It seemed that he could slap them to death with a slap. Thinking of this, Tony raised his hand and threw a big bee at the nearest Dr. Zora. Boom! The moment Tony's palm touched Dr. Zora's clone, the world seemed to have undergone some kind of change, and the world shook. And those clones of Dr. Zora were like bubbles, shattering one after another. Dr. Zora's original body watched all this with his eyes almost popping out. But before he could react, an indescribable force descended on him. In an instant, Dr. Zora felt that his body was about to be torn apart, and his soul power dissipated a lot, making the whole person even weaker. Damn, what happened? What kind of monster are you? Dr. Zora barely maintained his illusory figure for a while, staring at Tony, and his roar was full of anger and deep fear. "Kill your people," Tony said, and his mind moved, and his body was immediately covered with battle suits. These battle suits were all transformed by his thoughts, and they were no different from Dr. Zora's clones. It's just that the things that Tony's thoughts transformed are much more terrifying than Dr. Zora. Damn it, I'm immortal. Immortal, you can't kill me. You're the one who's going to die. Dr. Zora roared fiercely. His whole body was also covered with mechas, and he turned into a huge robot. However, no matter how you look at this robot, it's an enlarged version of the robot in the outside world, and it's ugly. The difference between the two is obvious. At the same time, in the outside world, those self-destructing robots seemed to have received some orders. They all moved and gathered around Kinluo. Haha, this is not a martial ethics. Kinluo sneered and stood up. Just as he was about to take action, he was stopped by Jarvis. "Mr. Kinluo, leave this to me," Jarvis said. Without waiting for Kinluo's reply, he manipulated Tony's battlesuit and rushed towards the self-destructing robots. "Forget it. Let's continue watching the show." Kinluo shrugged helplessly and sat back in the fish again. Chapter 400 Clearing Robots and Tyrannizing Zora. Jarvis manipulates the combat power of the battlesuit. Compared with Tony, it is even stronger. The arc pulse cannon is almost played out in his hands. It can even turn, which is even more exaggerated than the gunfighting in some melodramatic TV dramas. However, Kinluo, who has the inheritance of the ghost sword, can't help but think of the symbol and rough Wang Daking when he saw this scene. Combined with the mechanical sense of the battlesuit, it is a combination of a gunner and a mechanic. Those self-destructing robots are clumsy and slow. Although the explosive bombs contained in their bodies are powerful, they can't get close to Jarvis at all. It can't play any role. Before it gets close, it is solved by the arc pulse cannon and missiles. The continuous explosions made the entire mountain belly extremely unstable. From time to time, there were gravels falling. Seeing this, Kinluo directly slapped his hand on the ground, and the wave force spread out, mobilizing the surrounding natural forces to attach to the entire mountain. In an instant, the originally turbulent mountain range stabilized. Kinluo clapped his hands in satisfaction. The power of fluctuation is really good at mobilizing the power of nature. Maybe I can study new moves. Maybe it will be more powerful than the original skills. Don't forget, GST was only level 84 back then. Now Kinluo's average level has reached level 80. It doesn't seem to be a problem to create some new moves. After Kinluo stabilized the mountain, Jarvis was more relaxed. All kinds of weapons bloomed, and they were bombarded towards the self-destructing robots as if they were free. Boom, boom, boom. Continuous explosions sounded. Kinluo roughly estimated that Jarvis had used at least 30 or 40 special weapons just now, and the power was stronger than the other. It seems that Tony's strength has also improved a lot during this period. At the same time, Kinluo also secretly sighed that Tony is indeed a big dog. He is really rich. Let alone other things, The loss of weapons in this battle alone is estimated to be millions of beautiful national currency. If it were Daredevil, he couldn't afford it even if he had it. Sure enough, the money power is well deserved. There are more than 100 self-destructing robots in the entire mountain range. However, at this time, the number can no longer achieve a qualitative change. The technological strength of the two sides is really dozens of levels apart. In fact, if Dr. Zora is still controlling it personally, Jarvis will definitely not win so easily. The control of the machinery alone is enough to make Jarvis unable to operate. Unfortunately, there is no if. Now Dr. Zora is concentrating on dealing with Tony. If he is not careful, he will die. How can he take care of this side? So under the bombardment, those self-destructing robots all turned into slag and scattered throughout the mountain. It was also at this time, the battle on the screen also reached a white-hot state. In fact, it can't be said to be white-hot. It should be said that the battle is about to end, because Tony's supermark suit on the screen is suppressing Dr. Zora's robot and beating it violently. Chapter 98. At this time, a cursing voice sounded from behind Kinluo. You don't need to look to know that Tony has taken control of his battle suit again. Kinluo was surprised that Dr. Zola could control Tony's battle suit, but after thinking about it, it's not that difficult to explain. When your soul flows into the machine, some incredible changes will naturally occur. I vaguely remember that in the original plot, Dr. Zola has the ability to control many machines, and he can control them in a moment. How is Jarvis? Tony said, and then he saw the red shadow on the screen. His words stopped instantly, and his face became not very good. Red Queen, what's wrong with her? You called her here. Tony looked at Kinluo, his eyes full of resentment. Kinluo quickly raised his hands and said innocently, Don't look at me. I don't know what's going on with Red Queen. She suddenly appeared. I'm also wondering. Humphrey, how can a big sister watch her little brother get beaten? You have to look at the owner before beating a dog. Red Queen's voice suddenly sounded, and then appeared in front of the screen, looking at Tony with dissatisfaction and said, I'm not a dog. Jarvis's weak voice sounded, as if it was some kind of pitiful little beast. You don't need to intervene. This is my own business. Tony obviously didn't want to talk nonsense with Red Queen at this time, and spoke directly. Your own business? Then why did you drag Jarvis into it? Isn't he a person in your eyes? Red Queen glared at Tony. For an emotional artificial intelligence, she has already regarded herself as a person. Naturally, she can't tolerate other people and ignore that they are independent individuals. Red Queen's words made Tony stunned. He asked himself whether he really regarded Jarvis as a person. The answer is naturally self-evident. Kinluo actually did a little better than Tony in this regard. After all, Red Queen was not created by Kinluo, so it was difficult for Kinluo not to regard her as a person. But Tony was different. Jarvis was completely created by Tony. In addition to serving himself, the main reason was to remember the old butler. After Tony looked at Jarvis with a complicated expression, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. You're right. I want to take revenge by myself, so I'll do it by myself. Even Jarvis can't replace it. Tony deliberately emphasized the word by myself. Kinluo frowned slightly, as if he realized something, and looked at Tony and didn't know what to say. Humphrey, pay attention next time. Red Queen snorted coldly, her expression eased slightly, and then turned around and attacked Dr. Zora again. A red light flashed from the fingertips of Red Queen, and Dr. Zora just breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the sharp eyes of Red Queen. He was immediately scared and dodged quickly. Boom boom boom. Continuous explosions sounded, and Dr. Zora's body was submerged in the explosion. Enough, Red Queen. You and Jarvis don't need to do anything about this, Tony said with an extremely serious expression. Red Queen turned around and frowned, but seeing Tony like this, she didn't say anything but just looked at Kinluo. After all, here, Kinluo is the only one who can command her. Listen to Tony. After all, this is his father's murderer. Be good and leave first, Kinluo said softly. Although Red Queen was a little dissatisfied when she heard this, she still disappeared in this world very obediently. Sir, actually you don't have to care about what Red sister said. My power comes from you. Jarvis saw Tony like this, and hurriedly came to the screen to comfort him. However, Tony just shook his head and didn't say much. "Sir," Jarvis muttered 2 words and then shut up, lowering his head slightly, not knowing what he was thinking. "Howard's stupid son, aren't you going to take revenge yourself? What are you doing with these 2 man-made monsters? It's a disgrace to your father's reputation." Dr. Zola felt that the Red Queen had disappeared, and he became arrogant again, but he no longer looked like a stray dog before, and the scolding was so ugly. "Humphrey, wait." Tony was no longer angry to the point of losing his mind. After a cold snort, he turned around and looked at Kinluo, and said seriously, "Kinluo, help me once, just like you separated Dr. Banner and Hulk, put my soul into this machine. This should not be difficult for you, right?" Kinluo heard this and thought to himself that it was true. When Tony was talking to the Red Queen just now, Kinluo noticed Tony's thoughts. "It's just that I didn't expect this guy to be so determined." Kinluo's expression rarely became serious. He looked at Tony and said, "It's not difficult to pull out your soul. After all, your soul is a complete soul. It's easy to pull it out of the body, but have you really thought about it? Once the soul is damaged, it may cause extremely serious sequelae. Even I dare not say that I can cure you with absolute certainty." Tony nodded resolutely and said, "I have thought about it. Let it go. If I can't avenge my father personally, I'm afraid I will never be at peace in my life." "Come on, since you have decided, I will fulfill your wish. Relax your mind," Kinluo said, and before Tony could react, he slapped Tony's chest with a palm. I saw a transparent figure flying out of Tony's body and suspended in the air. This is Tony's soul. Chapter 399 The terrifying power of the soul. Is this the state of the soul? Tony looked at his translucent palm with a look of surprise on his face. Even for a genius scholar like him, the soul is still an untouchable field. It belongs to the legendary existence. Even though Tony has witnessed the existence of many souls. When he was in the Death Town, he witnessed millions of evil spirits. But it was the first time for him to become a soul. However, compared to Tony's surprise, Kinluo and Wanda's eyes flashed with shock. There was no other reason. Tony's soul was a little too powerful. It can be said that apart from ghosts and gods, even the spirit of revenge in Johnny's body, the soul power contained is not necessarily much stronger than Tony. It is no exaggeration to say that if this is the world of those horrors that have revived, Tony may be able to pretend to be a great evil level after his death. It is even possible to become an evil god. Kinluo really didn't expect that this guy really didn't show any strong soul at ordinary times. Kinluo vaguely remembered that there seemed to be a saying, in addition to the 6 infinite gems, there is actually a wisdom gem, and Tony is the incarnation of the wisdom gem. Originally, Kinluo didn't care too much about such a statement. After all, Tony doesn't look like the incarnation of a gem, but now he felt that this statement seemed to have something to it. Kinluo was so shocked, not to mention Wanda on the side. Wanda, who possessed the power of chaos magic, was naturally not too unfamiliar with the soul. Although she could not see how powerful Tony's soul was, but she could feel that she could not really control this soul power. In other words, Wanda could not do anything to Tony in the soul state. "Hey, what are you doing? This is not the first time you have seen a soul. Send me in quickly," Tony shouted at Kinluo, with a flame of hatred in his eyes. "I can't wait to get revenge." Kinluo was originally worried about whether Tony's soul would be damaged, but now it seems that he should not worry about Tony, but should pity Dr. Zola. "Quick battle. The time has been delayed for a long time, and I have to go back to prepare the food," Kinluo said easily, and slapped Tony into the robot with a slap. It must be said that Tony was really difficult to deal with after he became a soul. Chapter 99 He stared at Jarvis, and after a long time, he couldn't say anything. Suddenly, Dr. Zora's eyes flickered, and his panicked face became firm. He stared at Jarvis and said, "You are not Jarvis's soul. Even if you look like him, you are definitely not Jarvis's soul. This technology is only mastered by me. No one in this world will know what the hell you are." Dr. Zora almost shouted the last sentence. "Haha, stop talking nonsense. Jarvis is the artificial intelligence I created. He will help me kill you with his own hands." "Killed here, I see how you can be immortal. I won't even let you have the chance to decay," Tony sneered and said, Jarvis, kill this garbage for me. Okay sir. As Jarvis' voice sounded, Jarvis on the screen directly attacked Dr. Zora. The figures of the two quickly shrank on the screen. At first glance, it was similar to the fighting game on the red and white machine, but this process is much more brutal than the red and white machine. Although Dr. Zora is short and looks extremely wretched, he is really decisive. It can even be said that Jarvis was suppressed by Dr. Zora in this world. In fact, it is not surprising to think about this result. After all, Jarvis is just an artificial intelligence, even if it is infinitely close to the human soul. But there is an essential gap after all, and this is still someone else's territory. It is not so easy to suppress others in Dr. Zora's territory. Asshole, you are just a man-made garbage. Why do you fight me? Why? Dr. Zora roared, and at this time he kept attacking Jarvis like a beast. And Jarvis is not an existence that can be slaughtered. His arm turned into a long sword and chopped at Dr. Zora's head fiercely. At the same time, the other arm turned into a Gatling gun. Countless bullets sprayed out from the Gatling gun. This combo was quite beautiful. It's a pity that it is not so easy for Dr. Zora to get hurt in this world. In an instant, the screen flashed, and then countless Dr. Zora appeared, rushing towards Jarvis one after another. Jarvis's attack fell on the thousands of Dr. Zora. Although the first few were easily torn to pieces, but the ones behind could not be eliminated immediately, and soon Jarvis was controlled by Dr. Zora. He could not move in any world, like fish on a chopping board. Damn it, Jarvis, hold on. Seeing this, Tony was a little panicked and inserted his arm into the electronic cigarette again. At the same time, a light curtain appeared on his arm. After continuous operation, one by one, unclear light fell from the sky and fell on Jarvis. The controlled Jarvis immediately seemed to be assisted by God. He turned into a giant and broke free from Dr. Zora's restraints. https://w.tvts.net/ and also destroyed most of his clones. Get in the way. Do you think you can control my world? Dr. Zora's face on the screen suddenly grew bigger, and he looked at Tony fiercely. Tony's arm suddenly smashed towards him uncontrollably. Tony immediately controlled his arm, but at this moment, Tony gave himself another high kick, and his toes kicked hard on the mask. The mask was almost crushed. Tony couldn't help but scream at this time. His body is not so soft, even with the help of the armor. He can't do such a difficult action as a high kick. Just now, the cushion under little Tony almost tore directly apart. Then Tony was like the short circuit of Star Master's Variety Star. He kept dancing and attacking himself. That look was really as funny as it could be. Kinlawo originally wanted to help, but after seeing Tony gradually began to repair his own problems, he gave up the idea of helping. He turned his head and looked at the screen of Dr. Zora's robot again. At this time, Jarvis was in much better condition after Tony's assist. Although he was still at a disadvantage, at least he was not beaten by others. Just looking at the current situation, it is estimated that it will not take long for Jarvis to be defeated by Dr. Zora. However, at this moment, the change happened again. A touch of red appeared on the originally green screen. Then, the Red Queen in a dress appeared in the sky. The appearance of the Red Queen surprised Dr. Zora again. He did not expect that this kind of battle could summon people. More importantly, he did not feel the existence of the Red Queen at all. She seemed to have appeared in this world out of thin air. You know, when Jarvis appeared, he noticed it immediately. Another damn man-made garbage. You die too. Dr. Zora looked at the Red Queen fiercely, and then his body changed, and countless clones whistled out. They rushed towards the Red Queen. At the same time, Dr. Zora seemed to have turned into a war machine. Countless guns, ammunition and messy weapons attacked Jarvis and Red Queen. To be honest, Kinlawo was also very surprised to see Red Queen. This was not part of his plan, and Tony would not allow Red Queen to help Jarvis. After all, Red Queen is also part of Kinlawo's power. HMPH. Red Queen snorted coldly, then stretched out her hand and grabbed it. The originally small palm suddenly became larger. It smashed towards Dr. Zora like a giant palm, and the speed was extremely fast. Dr. Zora's attack did not set off any sparks in front of the giant palm. It was directly suppressed, including Dr. Zora's clones. Boom! A loud noise came from the screen, and Dr. Zora was slapped directly to the ground by the giant palm. That look was no different from a mosquito slapped on the wall. It can be said that the current strength of Red Queen is incomparable to the past. Compared with when she was just born, she is many times stronger. Now in this special world, I am afraid that there is no one who can be the opponent of Red Queen. Basically, it is equivalent to Kinluo's level on Earth. Chapter 398 True Revenge with Personal Hands. Tony's soul Jarvis has the help of Red Queen. Not only did he turn defeat into victory, but he also suppressed Dr. Zora. In that special world, Dr. Zora can be said to be in danger. There were several times when he was almost slapped to death by Red Queen, but this is Dr. Zora's territory after all. With the advantage of the terrain and familiarity, Dr. Zora is like a slippery loach, and he can successfully avoid the pursuit of Red Queen and Jarvis every time. Kinluo watched the scene in front of him with relish. Even though the picture quality was blurry, this difficulty was not a problem for the experienced Kinluo. Wanda and Quicksilver stared at the picture on the screen with wide eyes. There was an inexplicable dreamlike feeling. They were like observers, watching the fight in another world, a world that had never been seen before. Asshole, asshole, damn asshole. Chapter 100. Kinluo shook his head helplessly. If Tony hadn't said that he wanted to deal with Dr. Zola himself and didn't let him intervene, how could those robots have the chance to self-destruct? There was no way. In order to take care of Tony's emotions, Kinluo could only be a qualified audience, watching everything happening in front of him. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a light suddenly lit up in the originally dark belly of the mountain. An ancient laboratory appeared in front of everyone deep in the belly of the mountain. Tony was not afraid at all. He jumped directly into the laboratory. Kinluo and others also jumped down. After everyone landed, there was a strange and old robot sitting in the laboratory. The robot was quite simple, even without facial features, only a red electronic eye standing on the forehead. The whole body was black and dirty, but there was no rust. That look was really like an abandoned robot, the kind that would not arouse any desire except selling iron. The only place that could be said to be clean was probably the display screen on his chest. Although the robot looks like this, Kinluo knows that this is Dr. Zora's body. But Kinluo didn't expect that Dr. Zora would expose his position so straightforwardly. With the wave perception, Kinluo can sense that there are at least hundreds of robots similar to those self-destructing robots in the laboratory in the belly of the mountain. If all those robots are deployed, it is not difficult to blow up the whole mountain. Tony may also suffer a little loss. Sizzled, sizzle, sizzle. Suddenly a harsh sound came from the robot, and then bursts of snowflakes appeared on the screen on the chest. But soon those snowflakes gradually condensed into a figure. Perhaps due to the limitations of the times, the figure is not clear, and the overall color is black and green. It looks really scary. Hello, young people. I am Dr. Zora of Hydra. Chapter 396 Immortality. Don't be shameless, Dr. Zora. I have heard of your great name for a long time. I have heard of your feet like thunder. Kinluo sat down with a big horse and a golden knife, and greeted Dr. Zora with a smile. But Tony and others were not as interested as Kinluo. He and Wanda looked at Dr. Zora with hatred. It looked like they wanted to drag him out of the machine and then abuse him, especially Tony, who looked at Dr. Zora with eyes that seemed to be spitting fire. Mr. Kinluo, a shining morning star that has risen recently, your strength has exceeded the cognition of countless people. Even I can't calculate the upper limit of your strength. Dr. Zora's tone was a bit special, and his eyes flashed with greed when he looked at Kinluo. But the blurred picture did not perfectly express his emotions. It always looks weird. Huh, with your antique-like old guy, what do you want to calculate? Tony snorted coldly, looking at Dr. Zora hatefully and said, You must be Howard's son, Tony Stark, right? I've seen your photo before, but I didn't expect you to grow so big in the blink of an eye. Dr. Zora on the screen now set his sights on Tony, looking at him like an elder and sighing. Tony, who was already furious, became even more furious when he heard this. He raised his palm directly, and the arc pulse cannon quickly gathered, and the shining blue light almost illuminated the entire mountain belly. Don't mention my father's name, you bastard. I'm going to kill you now. Tony was about to launch the arc pulse cannon. Haha, it's useless. Even if you can destroy this body, you can't really kill me. Dr. Zora looked at Tony with ridicule, and then opened his arms as if to show off and said, I am now immortal. Boom. The arc pulse cannon bombarded Dr. Zora's robot body. Suddenly, fire and explosions sounded, and Tony directly blasted Dr. Zora's body into pieces. Not even a complete part was left. Tony, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but sometimes, can you please consider us? If I hadn't been protected by my sword energy, I would have been injured by you by mistake. Kinlawo waved his hands to disperse the smoke and dust raised by the explosion, and spoke helplessly. Good people don't live long, but evil people live for 1,000 years. You are such a big evil, even if the earth is destroyed, you can't die. What nonsense. Tony didn't know if it was because he destroyed Dr. Zora's body, but he felt better. At least his face no longer looked like his father had died. TSK. Just think of it as a compliment. Kinlawo pouted and said, haha. Suddenly, a mocking laugh came, and then Dr. Zora's voice sounded again, Tony, I told you that it won't work, it's just a waste of effort. Everyone turned around and saw a robot that was exactly the same as before standing behind them. Dr. Zora's smiling face on the screen made people feel uncomfortable no matter how they looked at it. Really don't need my help, actually I really want to help now. https://w.v'_s.net/Kinlawo rubbed his wrist, looked at Tony seriously and said, I want to take revenge myself, I don't need your help. Tony rejected Kinlawo's proposal very firmly. Then he turned his head and looked at Dr. Zora with a smile on his face and said, you were afraid of my father at the beginning, and killed him with the despicable means of assassination. Have you ever thought that you would die in my hands today? I admit that your father is a genius. Whether it is fantastic ideas or all aspects, I am not as good as him. With him, it is difficult for Hydra to surpass him in technology, Dr. Zora said, his face full of admiration. Obviously, even if he is an enemy, Dr. Zora still admires Howard's genius. But soon the admiration on Dr. Zora's face turned into ridicule. He looked at Tony sarcastically and said, your father is a genius, but I don't see anything similar to him in you. Don't even mention you. Even if your father is still alive, he can't do anything to me now. Do you understand what immortality means? There is no weapon in this world that can kill me now. Kinlawo almost laughed out loud when he heard these words. He really doesn't know how big the toad at the bottom of the well is. Not to mention others, Kinlawo alone has 100 ways to kill him. And it's still very easy. He is called immortal. Don't be shameless. If immortality is his virtue, then immortality is too worthless. You know, even top-level father-level players like Ancient One and Odin can't achieve the so-called immortal existence. Stupid scrap metal. Narrow-minded guy. Prepare to die, Tony said and rushed directly to Dr. Zora. At this time, Dr. Zora had no intention of resisting at all, just looking at Tony like a jumping clown. Tony's movements were very swift and his posture was quite fierce. Except for Kinlawo, anyone who saw it would think that Tony was going to tear Dr. Zora's robot body to pieces. But the next second, something unexpected happened. Tony was just making a lot of noise but doing little. The moment he approached Dr. Zora, his speed suddenly slowed down, and he stretched out his finger and inserted it into Dr. Zora's electronic eye. The red electronic eye kept flashing, and it seemed to be affected by something special. Is that what you think? It's useless, you hurt. Damn it. What the hell are you? Dr. Zora still looked arrogant, but his tone changed when he said it. The unbelievable voice resounded through the mountain belly, and even the voice became a little sharp. I saw the screen on the robot's chest. In addition to Dr. Zora's head, another tall figure appeared. The figure was wearing a decent butler's uniform. Even though the picture quality was blurry, the handsome face of the man could be seen. This man was not a person, but Jarvis, who had been transformed by the Red Queen. The handsome Jarvis and the wretched Dr. Zora formed a sharp contrast. I don't know what Dr. Zora is thinking. Anyway, if Kinlawo is Dr. Zora, he will immediately feel ashamed. Asshole. You are Jarvis. Impossible. You should be dead. You should be dead. Dr. Zora obviously recognized Jarvis's identity. and the expression on his face was as if he had seen a ghost. Could it be ... Could it be? Chapter 397 Artificial Intelligence vs. Special Soul. Dr. Zoro was so shocked that he couldn't say a complete sentence. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.